Chapter 385. Pressure. Elder Xiao had a shocked expression as his eyes stared at the tiger in Jian Chen's hands. A look of utter disbelief could be seen. "Father, what's wrong?" Xiaomi was speechless at the sudden change in the elder's expression. This was the very first time he had ever seen his father in such a state. Elder Xiao continued to ignore Xiaomi as his eyes became more and more frosty. Carefully analyzing the tiger cub in Jian Chen's hands even more, his eyes seemed as if they could clearly see every single detail on the tiger. With the elder's stare being a tad bit frightening and the cub still quite young, it had begun to feel intimidated by the elder. The cub's petite body tried to burrow deeper into Jian Chen's arms as if trying to hide from the elder like it was scared. "Elder Xiao, what are you doing?" Jian Chen was beginning to grow nervous. He didn't know just what to think from the elder's actions. Had he really seen through the tiger's identity? The Ape King had told him before that a human shouldn't know of the true identity of a heavenly tiger god. Elder Xiao let out a long breath of air as the cold glint in his eyes began to recede. In a flash he had reverted back to his original expression with just a small complicated look as he turned to Jian Chen. "Jian Chen, talk to me honestly. This magical beast you found, was it really found in the forest?" "Elder Xiao, could it be you know of this tiger's background?" Jian Chen stared at the elder with an astonished look. The elder sighed once more before looking to Little Fatty. "Little Fatty, go and plow the fields." "Yes, grandfather." Fatty replied before giving both Jian Chen and the white tiger a curious look. But in the end, he went out to the fields to do as his grandfather asked. After Little Fatty had left, Elder Xiao looked at Jian Chen and Xiaomi. "You two follow me." Turning about, the elder walked into one of the rooms of the house. Xiaomi could feel that the situation had grown serious and cast a deep glance toward the tiger cub before following his father into one of the rooms nervously. Jian Chen stroked the head of the cub gently before following after the elder. This was the personal room of Elder Xiao. It was only 10 square meters, and the furniture was arranged in a simplistic manner. There was only a bed and wardrobe in the room and a small pile of objects in a corner. Aside from this, there was nothing else. The moment Jian Chen entered the room, a faint but transparent barrier enshrouded the entire room. Upon seeing the sudden activation of the barrier, Xiaomi had a startled look. "Father, what is the meaning of this? What has made you so cautious to create a barrier?" Jian Chen's face grew deathly serious as well as he stepped forward. No matter if he could believe it or not, one thing was certain: Elder Xiao had definitely figured out the matter behind the heavenly tiger god. Elder Xiao ignored Xiaomi once more and stared deeply at Jian Chen. "Jian Chen, speak the truth. Where did you come across this cub?" "Elder Xiao, do you know of the tiger cub's identity?" Jian Chen listened carefully for confirmation. Elder Xiao's eyes latched onto the tiger cub and spoke. "If my guess is not wrong, then this cub is the heavenly tiger god that has appeared several times in the ancient past." Jian Chen was startled at the elder's confirmation. Although he had guessed that the elder knew, hearing the elder personally confirm it still caused his heart to start beating irregularly. "Jian Chen, it seems that you are aware of what a heavenly tiger god is." The elder looked at Jian Chen with a solemn gaze. "That is correct. I know of the heavenly tiger god." It was only now that Jian Chen decided not to hide it. He then began to regale his tale of rum Guinness and what he was entrusted with. After listening to Jian Chen's story, the elder had descended into a quiet calm that was filled with thought. Jian Chen didn't make a sound in fear of breaking the elder's train of thought. Xiaomi continued to stand some distance away in complete shock at Jian Chen and the tiger cub he was carrying. He couldn't believe that the cub would unexpectedly have a mysterious background that was far beyond what he could even imagine. After a while, the elder finally sighed. "The appearance of a heavenly tiger god is something that should come as a blessing to the magical beast clans. If they are able to exploit this blessing, then they would be able to lay claim to a heavenly tiger god of the past. In that case, the magical beast clans would have a monstrous amount of power against the human world. Jian Chen, this heavenly tiger god you have may very well bring catastrophe to our human world." Hearing this, Jian Chen turned pale with fright from what the elder said. Could he possibly want to eliminate the tiger cub here and now in order to avoid any future trouble? "That should be unlikely, Elder Xiao." This tiger cub is very obedient. And with the current circumstances, I'm afraid that it'll remain within the human world for now. With time the cub will become partial to the human world and wouldn't be used against us. Furthermore, the cub's father was killed by the king of the Gilligan clan while the mother was seriously injured. When the cub matures, it will want to take revenge on the clan and not against humans. Jian Chen tried to explain in a hurry. If the elder wanted to kill the cub, then Jian Chen would have no chance of protecting it. The elder nodded his head with a thoughtful look. Your words have merit to them. Even if the heavenly tiger god will not prove to be a danger to humanity, it would still be a disaster if it were to travel by your side. Elder Xiao didn't let Jian Chen speak another word and continued to speak. This situation isn't as simple as you may think. The king of the Gilligan clan wouldn't try to kill the heavenly tiger god for no reason. That is because a heavenly tiger god is no small amount of power. With one, their fighting strength would soar to an unbelievable degree. Elder Xiao's words left Jian Chen at a loss on what to do. Sighing, the elder spoke. Jian Chen, the heavenly tiger god's life could be in danger at any moment. You must rear it as quickly as possible. It is only when its strength reaches a sufficient degree that danger might be mitigated. Elder Xiao, could there be some other secret in this matter? Jian Chen asked. The elder didn't respond to Jian Chen's question and merely replied, Jian Chen, you should go. Remember, raise the heavenly tiger god as soon as possible. Finally, there was a single crack in the normally impassive tone. Jian Chen looked at the elder with a curious eye for some time. Finally sighing, Jian Chen took the cub and left the room with doubt still in his eyes. For Elder Xiao to want me to raise the tiger cub as fast as possible, it seems that there is still something I don't know. Did Rum Guinness not tell me, or is this something even she doesn't know about? After Jian Chen left, Elder Xiao took out a blood-red token and handed it to Xiaomi. Xiaomi, take this spirit token and go straight to the Bloodsword sect. Tell the entire intelligence organization to mobilize everyone. Watch closely for anything that happens, and if there is any extremely strong experts that appear within the Tianyuan continent, report to me straight away. Father, didn't you say that you would never use the Bloodsword sect? Why are you? Xiaomi asked with a startled look. The situation has become far too grave. Don't ask any questions and take my token to the Bloodsword sect straight away. Elder Xiao interjected solemnly. His expression was dark and no longer looked like a simple farmer. Right now, he looked more like the valiant hero giving command to his entire army. Yes, your child will go now. Xiaomi didn't speak anymore and flew away with the token. After Xiaomi had left, the elder sighed before walking to his bed. They are growing far too bold if they would dare to kill even a heavenly tiger god. When the time comes and the heavenly tiger cub fully matures, their judgment will come. But they will try and infiltrate the human world in order to assassinate it soon enough. Forget it, it has nothing to do with me. If they truly come, then some other family will come to protect it. After leaving the elder's room, Jian Chen took the cub to his own room to rest. Then placing the cub on his bed, he began to caress the cub's ears and head. Mr. Cha. Closing its eyes in comfortable bliss, the tiger cub was fully content with being treated to Jian Chen's care. Right now in its heart, it was very partial to Jian Chen. Looking at the obedient tiger cub, Jian Chen took out several of the 1,000-year ginseng from within his space ring. Little white tiger, take this and eat it. This way, you'll grow up faster. The little tiger sniffed at the item offered to him curiously. Upon sniffing the sweet fragrance, its eyes widened before purring happily and taking the items into its mouth, relishing the meal. After eating several stalks of the 1,000-year ginseng, the tiger cub had finally finished eating. Closing its eyes once more, it began to sleep on top of the bed. Jian Chen knew that the cub was currently in the process of absorbing the spiritual qi in from its meal. Not wanting to bother the tiger, Jian Chen climbed onto the bed himself and began to drink the 100-grass wine given to him by the Ape King. The 1,000-year-old 100-grass wine had a great effect in helping a person's mind. After Jian Chen had finished off some of it, he closed his eyes in pure bliss as his soul enjoyed the pleasurable feeling. Feeling an azure light soar up from his dantian into his mind, Jian Chen felt his mind suddenly explode with excitement. Even the sword spirits were feeling the benefits. With Jian Chen's mind soaring in strength, his omnipresence ability was also increasing by leaps and bounds. Right now, with his soul undergoing improvement, Jian Chen felt as if he was being baptized and transcending to becoming an immortal. Chapter 386, Recovery of the Sword Spirits. A moment later, Jian Chen awoke from the comfortable state he was in only to feel himself many times stronger than before. Without delay, Jian Chen grabbed the bottle and began to chug it. This time, Jian Chen swallowed a large amount of the wine, finishing off a good amount of it quickly. Soon after the last drop had been swallowed, he began to relish in the comfortable feeling once more. 2 hours later, Jian Chen had finally absorbed the rest of the wine. At this moment, Jian Chen's ability with his thoughts had increased by another third. His omnipresence now allowed him to spread his senses to at least 13 kilometers. Jian Chen was incomparably happy. Jian Chen would have never believed that such a feat could be accomplished in such a short amount of time with his strength boosted and even his body had been affected. This 100-grass wine is truly a blessed item. Jian Chen sighed in admiration before drinking even more of the bottle. In a flash, the wine bottle given to him by the Ape King only had a small portion left. Carefully sampling it, Jian Chen closed his eyes and began to allow his mind to strengthen. The vital energy within the 100-grass wine continued to swirl around Jian Chen's dantian before quickly dissipating. The azure qi from the wine quickly soared up into Jian Chen's head before entering Jian Chen's consciousness. Within his consciousness, the sword spirits that were revolving around the multicolored stone pulsated with happiness as the light coming from them began to flicker. When the azure qi ascended into Jian Chen's consciousness, the spirit that Jian Chen shared with the sword spirits benefited greatly. The weakened soul of the sword spirits began to grow stronger with the light around them growing richer in concentration. After an unknown amount of time, the 100-grass wine had been completely absorbed by Jian Chen and his spirit felt complete bliss radiating through it. Suddenly, Jian Chen felt a tremendous change that he had never felt before. Without even spreading his presence, he was able to detect the wind blowing on the grass 100 meters away. At this moment, Jian Chen realized that his spirit had harmonized with the world. Without even needing to plan carefully, he had already entered a state of harmony with the world. He was able to clearly sense everything within 100 meters, almost like he could control everything. It was as if this area was his domain. Spreading out his omnipresence, Jian Chen's senses had instantly covered the valley. All of the villagers currently working out in the fields could be seen like a painting within Jian Chen's mind. Despite the actual distance between them, Jian Chen could see their every movements down to the finest detail. All of the villagers had been taught how to cultivate by Xiaomi, so they had all been able to cultivate to a certain degree. Although the strongest ones weren't even a great saint master, the good majority of them were saints or just great saints. Some didn't care at all about cultivating and thus hadn't even condensed their saint force to form a saint weapon yet. Following that, Jian Chen spread his presence out to the farming Elder Xiao. Immediately, he could feel that Elder Xiao was not a person, but rather the entire world fused into a person. Even as he brandished the hoe over and over again, all he could sense in Elder Xiao was the immeasurable amount of profound mysteries of the world. Jian Chen's omnipresence continued to spread until it reached 15 kilometers before he had finally hit his limit. After drinking the 100-grass wine, Jian Chen's mind had improved by leaps and bounds. To him, this was certainly something to celebrate over. Master, Master. Suddenly deep within Jian Chen's mind, he could hear a faint voice. Soon after, he felt just where the voice was coming from and was instantly shocked. Master, I can finally communicate with you. It was just then that Jian Chen could heard the inexplicable joy in the voice. You're the azure and violet sword spirits? Jian Chen spoke with a bit of a stammer. Master, I am Ziying, you may call me Xiao Zi. Spoke the Ziying sword spirit. Its voice sounded rather masculine and youthful. Master, I am Qing Sua, you may call me Xiao Qing. Suddenly, another soft voice could be heard. This one was as pleasant-sounding as a skylark. Jian Chen couldn't help but submerge himself into his consciousness. At that moment within the chaotic space of his mind, The multicolored stone could no longer be seen floating around. In its place were two strange people. Both were around the age of 2, while one was a handsome male, the other was a beautiful female that complemented the male perfectly. The male had violet hair that seemed to droop all the way down to his chest. He wore a classic violet chongpao and had eyes that glowed with a curious violet shade. The female wore an azure cheongsam that suited her long azure hair quite nicely. Her appearance was unrivaled and her azure eyes would cause any male to choke up. Jian Chen's chest began to heave and his tongue started to stop working as he looked at the golden couple. It was finally with a stammer that he spoke. You two, are you two the sword spirits? Yes, master. I am Xing, she is Qingsuo. The violet-robed man spoke with a smile. Jian Chen was speechless. He knew about the situation regarding the sword spirits, but he still found it hard to believe that the sword spirits would unexpectedly gain a human form within his consciousness. After a moment, Jian Chen sucked in his breath and attempted to calm himself once more. Staring at the sword spirits, he spoke, I didn't think that we would met in such a manner. Has your energy been fully recovered? Xing went silent for a moment before shaking his head. Master, we are still very weak. It is only because of the 100-grass wine that we were able to recover enough strength to take on physical forms and talk. Call me Jian Chen, not master. I am no master to you, we can just be fellow friends. Jian Chen grimaced at the word, master. Master, when we entered your body, we submitted to you. You are the master of Xing and Qingsu. Qingsuo spoke with a pleasant sound. Qingsuo's words had caused Jian Chen to think back to when he had originally died. It was after that moment that he was born in such an unfamiliar world. That's right, I can still remember when I died. Was it because of you two that I was reincarnated into this world? Hearing this, Qingsuo and Xing both looked at each other in silence before Xing opened his mouth. Master, at that time it was indeed Qingsuo and I that brought you to this planet. In the previous planet, you had suffered a tremendous wound and the qi of the world began to escape your body. If that continued, then you wouldn't have been able to make any improvements. At the very most, you would never reach the strength of a heaven saint master of this world. Because of that, Qingsuo and I took you from that planet, but when we entered the crack in space, the both of us suffered tremendous damages. With not much strength remaining, we were unable to deliver you to where we intended, and thus we were only able to relocate you to a planet that was just stronger than your original world. So it really was because of you too. Jian Chen muttered. In truth, when he found out about the existence of the two sword spirits, he had already came to such a conclusion as a guess. Master, are you going to blame Xing and Qingsuo? Qingsuo spoke with a timid voice. With a cordial smile, Jian Chen replied, if it weren't for you two, then I wouldn't have been able to experience such a magical world or come across such a large amount of strength. You've allowed me to grow strong and expand my world. I don't even have enough time to say all of my thanks, so what reason would I have to blame you two? After his reply, Qingsuo immediately sighed in relief. Continuing to speak, Jian Chen said, what should we do so that you can recover as soon as you can? Master, we cannot recover to our full strength in this world. The qi of this world is far too weak. At the very best, we would be able to recover a small amount of it. Xing said. Although he had heard what Xing had said, Jian Chen still didn't quite understand. Since he was prioritizing the recovery of the sword spirits, he didn't pay any more attention to what he said. Then what could we do to recover your health for now? Xing pointed at the multicolored stone floating some distance away. Master, this multicolored immortal crystal is the only thing that can help us for now. For the past few days, Qingsuo and I have been absorbing the immortal crystal's spirit qi. Multicolored immortal crystal? What is that item? Jian Chen asked. Master, the multicolored immortal crystal is a crystal formed from the condensation of an immortal's qi after millions of years. It is not an item of this world, so the fact that we were able to come across it is an inconceivable matter. Millions of years. Jian Chen sucked in a deep breath of shock. Master, if only we were able to find more heavenly resources like the 100-grass wine. Otherwise, we will only be able to use the multicolored immortal crystal in order to heal. Seeing how weak the qi of this world is, it serves no use to us. Chapter 387. Chaotic Force. Now that the Azure and Violet Sword spirits had taken on human form and were capable of speech, Jianchen could communicate with them with ease. It was no longer as difficult as before where they needed to use telepathy. Jianchen asked many questions that he hadn't understood and began to clear up the problems he had. At the very least, the most important thing he learned was that the sword spirits had been responsible for bringing him to this world. Qingsuo, is there any chance of me being able to cultivate with Saint Force anymore? Jianchen asked quickly. Losing his Saint Force had left him unable to use his illusionary flash or the unbelievably fast sword skills that he was renowned for, so this caused him no small amount of unwillingness. The two sword spirits gave each other a look before looking at Jianchen hesitantly. For a quick moment of silence, Xing finally said, "Master, using a special method, you would be able to continue cultivating with Saint Force. However, the Saint Force of this world is far too weak." Too weak? Jianchen asked in disbelief. Xing nodded his head. "Yes, Master. This world's Saint Force is far too weak, so I recommend that you do not restart your cultivation." He stopped talking for a moment before continuing to speak before Jianchen could. "Master, with Qingsuo and I combined together, we could help you cultivate the chaotic force." Cultivate chaotic force? Is this chaotic force even stronger? Jianchen asked with doubt. Xing nodded his head. "Yes, Master. Chaotic force is the strongest of energy." "Then how do I cultivate chaotic force?" Jianchen asked with some eagerness. He couldn't allow for such a strong opportunity to run by him. "Master, Qingsuo and I were born from chaos itself. Our yin and yang bodies were evolved from the chaotic force, and as long as Qingsuo and I are combined, then we can extract chaotic force from any energy in the world." Xing spoke with some satisfaction as if being able to cultivate chaotic force was an extremely terrific ability. The azure-robed Qingsuo opened up her mouth to speak. "Master, refining chaotic force requires a tremendous amount of world qi. It would take 10 years to refine even the smallest amount of chaotic force from the small amount of world qi here. Master, the ruler armaments in your hands contain a massive amount of energy. Xing and Qingsuo can use that energy to refine into chaotic force." Upon hearing this, Jianchen was beyond pleased. The ruler armaments were next to useless for him since he couldn't use their power, making them two pieces of garbage. With the seal of Treasure Mountain on his body, he also had to worry about the Sher family using their special method to find him, which was a shame since Jianchen had no idea how to deal with that. Right now, the Violet and Azure Sword spirits could relieve him of a major headache by refining the energy within the weapons into chaotic force. This would then improve his strength, which was something he definitely agreed with. "No problem, the Duanyun sword and the seal of Treasure Mountain I hand over to you then. When will you be able to refine them into chaotic force?" Jianchen asked a little impatiently. Seeing the impatient look on Jianchen's face, Xing and Qingsuo began to smile. "Master, we can refine the chaotic force whenever you wish. However, because the world qi in this world is quite weak, refining the chaotic force will use up a huge volume of qi. This will make Master's future cultivation even harder. No worries, if worst comes to worst, I'll find even more ruler armaments to take." Jianchen waved his hands without concern. "If you wish, then Master, if you could please hand over the ruler armaments. Xing and Qingsuo will refine the chaotic force for you." Qingsuo spoke. Retreating from his mind space, Jianchen grabbed both the Duanyun sword and the seal of Treasure Mountain before thinking to himself, "Xing, Qingsuo, what is the next step?" As soon as he thought of the words, Jianchen felt his mind tremble for a moment before Xing and Qingsuo disappeared from his mind. In the next moment, they had left his mind space and appeared above his head. Right now the two looked like two weak glows of light and mist in human form, but their facial features could not be seen. Lifting his hand, a wave of mysterious energy began to raise out from the seal of Treasure Mountain, floating toward Xing. It flew up from Jianchen's hand to levitate over his head to where Xing and Qingguo were floating. Xing and Qingsuo both closed their eyes and lifted out their arms. A faint glow of azure and violet could be seen from their hands before enveloping the seal of Treasure Mountain, spinning it in the same shape of the yin-yang symbol. 2 hours later, the seal of Treasure Mountain had been completely refined and transformed into an extremely pure but powerful essence that rippled within the hands of Xing and Qingxua. However, Xing didn't stop the process there and began to use his origin energy to hammer it. This went on for another hour, causing the energy to turn gray in color like a ball of smoke. Not only was it faint in color, there was an indescribable air to it. Xing and Qingxua both raised their hands, causing the gray gas to enter Jianchen's body before resting within his dantian. Master could use the Azulite Sword Law and transform this chaotic force into your own power. Xing and Qingxua both spoke in synchronism. Without delay, Jianchen began to do as told. This process only took up 4 hours of Jianchen's time. After those 4 hours, Jianchen had successfully transformed the chaotic force into his own energy. When he looked at the wisp-like energy within his dantian, he couldn't help but ask, Xing Qingxua, is this really chaotic force? Yes, Master. This is chaotic force in its initial stage. Xing spoke. Hearing this, Jianchen was confused. The initial stage of chaotic force? What does that mean? Xing looked a little embarrassed, but he didn't say anything else. Qingxua began to smile as if trying to apologize for him. Master, this is the weakest amount of chaotic force. The true power found within chaotic force cannot be recreated just yet because the amount of energy in these ruler armaments is still far too weak, so the true chaotic force cannot be attained. Ah, I understand now. Jianchen spoke with clarity. However, he still only knew some basics regarding the chaotic force. A ruler armament was created after the energy from a 9th-layer Heaven Saint Master crystallized, but he didn't think that the overwhelming power from such an item would result in such a tiny amount of chaotic force. From this, Jianchen couldn't even possibly imagine just how strong the chaotic force would be. Master, the cultivation methods of this continent do not suit the cultivation methods of the chaotic force. In the future, you will only be able to cultivate using the Azulite Sword Law. The Azulite Sword Law were actually a high-leveled cultivation method written by a deity. Written inside are ways to cultivate using the world chi of any world and convert it into chaotic force. Xing spoke. Cultivation methods were special methods on absorbing and refining energy to become one's own strength. The Azulite Sword Law was truly an extremely mysterious cultivation method that worked in any situation to transform any energy into chaotic force. Nodding his head, Jianchen felt his heart sigh in admiration. He didn't think that the Azulite Sword Law would have such a purpose. Master, but Xing opened his mouth once more before hesitation overcame him as if he didn't know whether or not he should tell him. But what? Qingxua blinked rapidly for a moment as she hesitated before speaking with her light voice. Master, the Azulite Sword Law has 3 volumes. You have the first volume, but not the other 2. What? Jianchen cried out, unable to contain his shock. What could we do about the other 2 volumes then? Xing and Qingxua both looked at each other briefly, as if hesitating, before Qingxua spoke. Master, in truth, the first volume is only enough for you to cultivate chaotic force. The other 2 volumes are still a long ways away from you. Xing piped up next. Yes, Master, there is no need for you to look for the other 2 volumes at the moment. 1 is enough for now. Wait until you have more strength, then the other 2 volumes will be attainable. Furthermore, chaotic force is far too tyrannic. Master, if you wish to cultivate chaotic force in the future, then you must have a chaotic body refined as well. Only a chaotic body will be able to withstand the chaotic force. Otherwise, if Master were to try and use the chaotic force, it would cause a tremendous amount of damage. What? Cultivating chaotic force requires a chaotic body? How does one cultivate that? Jianchen asked the 2. He hadn't thought that it would be so complicated. Master, refining the chaotic body is explained within the Azulite Sword Laws. Xing replied. With that, Jianchen asked a single question in surprise. So it does not require a large amount of chaotic force? It does require a large amount of chaotic force, but Master doesn't need to worry about that now. Ziying spoke carefully. He didn't know just how Jianchen would react to this. Jianchen almost felt dizzy from this conversation, but he wasn't very disappointed. Taking in a long deep breath, he began to mutter, "I just knew there wasn't such a thing as a free meal in this world. I didn't think that the chaotic force would be this troublesome." A ruler armament had only a sliver of chaotic force, and a large amount of chaotic force is required to refine the chaotic body. Good heavens, where would I go to find such a large concentration of this energy? Jianchen didn't quite know if he was happy or sad about this entire situation. Although he had come across a great change within his body, his path would be a long and narrow one for now. Seeing Jianchen's emotions, Qingsuo couldn't hold back her silence and began to console him. "Master, do not be so discouraged. There is plenty of time in the future, and although the path set out for you is long and hard, you will one day have both the chaotic body and chaotic force." Jianchen quickly calmed down after she spoke. He knew all too well that having a great benefit would require a great price. There was no such thing as a free meal, and there was no such thing as a prize without a price. If one wanted a large amount of power, they had to be ready to pay a large price for it. Forget it, a step is still a step. Ziying, Qingsuo, let's continue with the Duanyun sword. This item has no use to me and puts me in harm's way. There's no way to tell whether or not the Jetta clan or Shi family will try to track us, so there is no benefit in their prolonged existence. Chapter 388. A strong body. After 4 hours, Ziying and Qingsuo had refined the energy from the Duanyun sword and transformed it into chaotic force, which made its way into Jianchen's dantian. The two wisps of smoke, the chaotic force, weaved around Jianchen's dantian. Although it was there, he couldn't feel tremendous power from the chaotic force. Not even a single speck could be felt, giving him the impression that this gas was almost useless. Despite all of this, Jianchen didn't dare underestimate its power. He could understand perfectly well that these two strands of chaotic force were formed from the energy of ruler armaments. Perhaps, the power of the chaotic force was so far outside Jianchen's depth of perception that he couldn't possibly understand the abilities of it. After Ziying and Qingsuo had refined the energy from the ruler armaments into chaotic force, they went back into Jianche's mind to rest. This left only Jianchen sitting on his bed to study the chaotic force within his body. The chaotic force is so strong that if one wishes to cultivate with it, one will need the chaotic body first. Without a strong enough body, a regular body will not be able to handle the chaotic force circulating from within. This means that the chaotic force is completely useless for me to use right now. Jianchen thought with furrowed eyebrows. Since this is the case, I will use some of the chaotic force to refine my body and grow stronger. Although the chaotic force is not enough for me to create a chaotic body, it will at the very least allow me to make my current body stronger. Jianchen thought to himself before quickly coming to a conclusion. After this conclusion, Jianchen immediately began to use some of the chaotic force to refine his body. Fortunately, he had cultivated with the Azulite sword laws for some time, so he had a large amount of experience cultivating with it. Although there was a sparse amount of the chaotic force, it was still strong enough for him. Willing a single strand of chaotic force to leave his dantian, Jianchen finally began to feel the intensity of it as it began to travel throughout. As soon as it started to spread, he began to feel weak as if his entire body was made from tofu. Wherever the chaotic force traveled, Jianchen's body racked with unbearable pain. His meridians threatened to break, and his inner organs began to fail, even his blood vessels were starting to tear. Despite it not being a large concentration of chaotic force, it was still a foreign type of energy that Jianchen's body couldn't handle. Jianchen had used the Azulite sword laws to cultivate his body, but it was the very first time he had encountered such a pain from doing so. On the bed, Jianchen's body constantly trembled as his face grew as pale as paper. Beads of sweat continued to drip down his face in large concentration, and his normally handsome face had twisted up from all of the pain with the occasional muscle spasms. Finally, a muffled sound of pain escaped from Jianchen's throat. He could no longer hold back the intensity of the pain as it had already far surpassed his pain tolerance 1,000 times over. The intense feeling of pain tormented his nerves and mind, Even he could not withstand it and finally fainted from the pain. Ah, master, just why would you use the chaotic force to temper your body now? Your body as it is not yet adequate. This would only serve to make you suffer. Master, you must endure this. Suddenly, Chingsu's voice suddenly called out in a hurried manner. Master, you must stay determined. Although the chaotic force is destroying your body, it is also recreating it. After this one time, the next few times will be easier to manage. Ziying's voice could be heard as well. Gritting his teeth in pain, Jianchen couldn't even say a word in response because of the pain. Not even a single syllable could be uttered coherently. As the tiny wisp of chaotic force continued to travel through his body, Jianchen felt as if miniature explosions were happening all throughout his entire body. The pain caused his muscles to break and blood to come out of his pores, dyeing his entire body red. In a flash, the chaotic force had spread throughout every part of his body, and he had already lost a third of his energy. Sighing, Jianchen prepared to use the radiant saint force to heal his body when Ziying's voice popped up in his mind. Master, don't stop yet. Clenching his teeth, he gave up the idea of resting and continued to try and withstand the circulation of the chaotic force through his body. After a while, the pain in Jianchen's body began to alleviate as the chaotic force made its third circulation around his body before disappearing. Seemingly as if he had lost all his energy, Jianchen fell down to the bed below as if he was a pile of mud. Master, you've managed to take the first step. After experiencing pain for the first time, you will have an easier time cultivating the chaotic force in the future. Naturally, the time the chaotic force was in your body will not be as intense as before. Xing and Qingsu's voice both spoke with some joy. But Jianchen was powerless to respond. Laying back on the bed, he thought about the pain he had just experienced with some terror. This pain was something that he couldn't possibly endure again. After resting for a moment to regain some energy, he began to use the radiant saint force within the world to treat his wounds. By now Jianchen's mind ability was extraordinarily strong. His ability to control the radiant saint force was far better than before, so the entire room basked in the milky white glow. However, since it was daytime, the light wasn't all too obvious and would escape any regular person's notice. Seeing this, Jianchen looked at Little Fatty with some surprise. Little Fatty, don't tell me you have a dark attributed saint force? He nodded his head. That's right. My father told me that the dark attribute is a rarely seen thing, but my grandfather has the same attribute as well. Elder Xiu is also a dark attribute cultivator? Jianchen thought, but he was quickly cut out from his thoughts as Little Fatty spoke. Jianchen, be careful, I'm going to strike. Little Fatty's battle axe began to glow a dangerous dark color before he charged straight for Jianchen. Because Little Fatty was under the misunderstanding that Jianchen had wanted to test his own strength, he didn't hold back his strength at all and swung his axe. There was only a flash of dark light as Little Fatty's axe ripped through the sky and smashed against Jianchen's shoulder. The violent amount of saint force rippled through his saint weapon before ripping apart Jianchen's clothes at the shoulders, revealing the pale white skin underneath. Seeing how Jianchen hadn't dodged at all and received the full blunt of the attack, Little Fatty's face grew white as he cried, Jianchen, why didn't you dodge? In the next moment, his eyes widened as he looked on in disbelief. That was because he had noticed that Jianchen had received no damage at all despite putting up no defense. At the very most, there was a faint impression on his shoulder. Just how is that possible? Am I going blind or something? Little Fatty couldn't believe his eyes. He had swung with all of his might, but his strike hadn't even managed to break the skin. Seeing just how he had taken no damage at all, Jianchen began to laugh with a great smile. His heart had soared with joy at this. A chaotic body was extremely strong. His body had become extremely strong after tempering it with just a single wisp of chaotic force. If he continued to temper his body like this, an Earth Saint Master or even a Heaven Saint Master would not be able to harm him. Chapter 389. The road home. Jianchen, your body, just how is it so strong? Are you made of iron or something? Little Fatty's eyes grew wide as he looked at the small mark on Jianchen's body. Taking out a new robe from his space ring, Jianchen laughed. Being made of iron would be a stretch, but my body is definitely stronger than an ordinary person. There was some fascination to little Fatty's eyes as he spoke. How did you strengthen it? It's like you transformed your body. Laughing, Jianchen didn't give an answer. Looking at the still unfinished field, Jianchen asked, Little Fatty, do you need my help? Yes, of course. My dad and grandfather went to plant corn and I'm left with all the vegetables here. You came here just in time. With 2 people, it'll take no time at all to finish the rest of the planting. Little Fatty spoke very casually with Jianchen and handed several seeds to him. I'll plant on this side, you go to that side. With the 2 of us working, we'll be able to finish this before dinner. Planting the seeds with Little Fatty, Jianchen spoke, Little Fatty, it is very possible that I will be leaving this place soon. Little Fatty's hand shook for a brief moment before he continued to silently work in the fields. Not too long after, he finally uttered a single sentence, I knew that life here wouldn't work out for you. Sooner or later, you would have left for the outside world. Letting out a long breath of air, Jianchen spoke, Little Fatty, I will talk to your grandfather tonight and have him consent to you being able to explore the outside world. You staying here forever is no suitable way of living with your talent. Staying here would just bury it. Jianchen, just what is the outside world like? Little Fatty stared at Jianchen with a fixated gaze as he waited for an answer. He had grown up in this secluded village without ever leaving the valley. Any information he knew from the outside world had been learned from word of mouth. He had never once seen it for himself, not knowing just how large it was. The outside world is huge, tremendous even. There are many people with many wondrous things. At the same time, the world is also very cruel and complex. Little Fatty, when you see the outside world for yourself, you will come to understand. Jianchen spoke. But, my grandfather would never let me leave. Little Fatty's face grew a little sad at that. I will talk with your grandfather tonight and try to convince him. Other than talking to his grandfather, Jianchen had no other solution. Elder Xiu was a person with an immeasurable amount of power. Jianchen had no wish to offend him. In a flash, the sun had begun to set to the west and the night began to overtake the skies. The bright red rays from the sunset could still be seen splashing across the sky as the chimneys in the village bellowed smoke into the air and danced in the wind. In a hurry, the 2 men quickly walked back home. After walking to their own rooms, Jianchen quickly went into his room to check up on the tiger cub. Right now, the tiger cub was sleeping, as the heavenly resources it ate earlier had not yet finished being absorbed. Seeing how the tiger was safe and sound, Jianchen left the room in relief before eating dinner with the rest of the family. However, there was one less pair of plates and chopsticks. Seeing this empty space, Little Fatty asked, Grandfather, where is Father? Little Fatty, your father has some matters to take care of, eat your meal. Elder Xiu smiled kindly with an affectionate gaze toward the fatty. Got it. Little Fatty replied before growing slightly dark. He knew that with his father had gone to the outside world, the world that he himself yearned to go to. Jianchen's eyes flickered over to Elder Xiu for a moment as he hesitated. Then he finally opened his mouth and spoke, Elder Xiu, have you never thought about Little Fatty going out to gain some experience? As he spoke, Jianchen's eyes stared heavily at Elder Xiu. As expected, the elder's face began to change in color, but Jianchen quickly spoke up before Elder Xiu could reply. Elder Xiu, allowing Little Fatty to live in this village his entire life would be detrimental to him. If he lives here for his entire life, Little Fatty will miss out on the many pleasures in life. Living here would not truly be growing up. If he doesn't experience the wind and rain of the outside world, he won't experience a true growth. I'm also sure you know of Little Fatty's dislike for this life. If you care for Little Fatty's growth, you shouldn't keep him forever locked up in this village. This is no way to become an adult. In the end, this would only serve to harm him instead of helping. Hearing this, the elder went quiet for a moment. He had traveled the continent himself for many years and experienced many things, so he could understand Little Fatty's desire perfectly clear. The problem was that he truly did not wish for Little Fatty to venture out into the outside world. With his countless experiences, he had seen straight through the very essence of the world, and now he only desired for little Fatty to live safely within the valley. If he stayed in this valley, then little Fatty would stay as pure and innocent as snow without being polluted by the mortal world. Jian Chen continued to fire off reason after reason for the elder to hear for the sake of allowing little Fatty to leave the valley. Racking his mind for any reason imaginable, Jian Chen tried his best to use them all as an argument. As if Jian Chen had addressed each of Elder Xiu's worries, he was completely silent throughout the meal and ate in a stiff-like movement. "Grandfather, it wouldn't be right to grow up without seeing the outside world at least once. I really wish to go out just once." Little Fatty looked at his grandfather almost pathetically. "Father, Jian Chen speaks the truth. I know that you have reached a realm that we cannot even dream of seeing and seen things we have not seen, but little Fatty is an inexperienced great saint master who has not experienced many things. He has no idea what goes on in the outside world, and the things you've seen, he has not. If he does not go travel the world, then he will never mature as an adult. Father, if you truly look out for little Fatty's best interests, let him experience the world for himself and increase his knowledge. If he comes across some trouble in the future, he must learn to face it with his own power." Little Fatty's mother spoke out earnestly with a kind yet naturally refined voice. Her words were filled with the bearings of a refined woman, one that came from a wealthy family. At Jian Chen's and little Fatty's mother's twin-prong assault, Elder Xiu finally let out a long sigh. Forget it. Your words are not without flaws. I was stubborn for far too long. Little Fatty, if you truly wish to explore the outside world, your grandfather will not stop you." "Really? You'll really let me explore the outside world?" Little Fatty was overjoyed. Seeing the look of pure joy on little Fatty's face, Elder Xiu couldn't help but sigh to himself mentally. Looking into his heart, he concluded that when he made little Fatty stay here, it was the wrong choice of action. Placing another mouthful of food into his mouth, Elder Xiu said, "Little Fatty, if you want to leave, then your grandfather won't stop you, but you must have the strength of an Earth Saint Master before you can go." "All right, Father, I'll work hard at cultivating and make the breakthrough to become an Earth Saint Master." Little Fatty was not discouraged at all. Seeing how happy little Fatty was, even his mother couldn't help but let out a smile as well. 3 days quickly went by peacefully. On the third day, Jian Chen and little Fatty were both cutting down timber in order to rebuild the burned-down house Jian Chen was in. This was the promise that Jian Chen had made. After completing the house, Jian Chen had bid farewell after promising that the two would meet a year from now at this spot. When little Fatty becomes an Earth Saint Master, they would leave together. Until then, Jian Chen would leave with the tiger cub. Before he left, however, Jian Chen held a space ring. This was given to him by Elder Xiu and contained many of the heavenly resources from the nearby mountain ranges. For the sake of the tiger cub, these resources were given to Jian Chen. With the tiger cub, Jian Chen flew far away from the valley without stopping so that he could find a space gate to return to the Jessen Kingdom. The distance from here to the Jessen Kingdom was far too wide. Even if Jian Chen were to fly the entire distance without stopping, it would take a tremendous amount of time and energy. So, the only solution was to use a space gate. Unfortunately, space gates were exceedingly rare throughout the Tianyuan continent. Although there was a space gate in Mercenary City, he wasn't able to use that one. Other than Mercenary City, however, Jian Chen had no idea where the closest space gate could be. The tiger cub suddenly began to growl, breaking Jian Chen out of his thoughts. Looking down, he could only see the cub staring off in the distance at some large piece of land while both of its paws swung wildly in midair. Jian Chen was unable to figure out just what the cub was trying to do or what it was thinking about. The tiger cub's rear paws pressed against Jian Chen's chest as its front two paws scratched in the direction of the forest. The wings on its back began to unfold almost as if it was about to fly out from Jian Chen's embrace. Holding the cub tightly, Jian Chen gently caressed its head before following the cub's stare and landing on a nearby tree branch. Transitioning to the ground, the cub leaped down and began to break out into a wild run towards several trees that were hundreds of meters tall. When Jian Chen arrived, he couldn't help but to laugh out loud. It turns out that this place was filled with spirit mushrooms. They were purple in color and weren't all too large. At the very most, they were 20 centimeters tall and 10 centimeters wide. But when the tiger cub saw them, its mouth began to water, allowing Jianchen to realize these were heavenly resources. Although the size and age of a spirit mushroom was generally small and young, not every heavenly resource needed to be old in age or big in shape. Carefully picking some of the spirit mushrooms, he gathered some for the impatient tiger cub and began to feed them to the cub, who purred affectionately. "Come and eat some." Jianchen laughed as he fed them one by one into the cub's jaws. With a cheerful purr, the cub continued to swallow the mushrooms before quickly going into hibernation to absorb their energy. Chapter 390, Qinhuang Kingdom. The road was peaceful once more. Jianchen never met another flying magical beast as he flew past the mountain ranges. Once past the mountain ranges, Jianchen was flying 1,000 meters in the air where the cold winds constantly blew against his body. His white robes fluttered in the wind with a flapping sound. His left hand held the white tiger cub, and his right hand held a map he had gotten from his space ring. This map contained details of the surrounding area to a good extent, but the Jessen Kingdom was still too far away, so Jianchen couldn't use the map to travel there. Jianchen's eyes scoured the map as he looked at all of the nearby kingdoms in the area around Mercenary City. For a brief moment, his eyes looked back to Mercenary City and gave a small sigh before looking elsewhere. He knew that he had more than enough strength to help the Jessen Kingdom in its time of need, but because he had no idea on the current circumstances of the kingdom, he needed to get back there as soon as possible. If he waited too long, then the Jessen Kingdom would be overrun and his family exterminated. To Jianchen, the latter was something he was not willing to see nor experience. So, his only goal was to find a space gate and then use it to travel to the Jessen Kingdom in the fastest way possible. Suddenly, the kingdom, Qinhuang, popped up in Jianchen's eyes. Taking a look, Jianchen's eyes began to sparkle as he quickly thought back to the friend he made, Qinji, during the gathering of the mercenaries. His hands began to shake as he took out the piece of jade from his space ring. On the jade piece, there was the single word for Qin engraved on it. This was the gift that Qinji had given to him before the two had parted. Looking at the considerably expensive piece of jade in his hands, Jianchen began to hum as he thought to himself, "Qinji has a ruler armament and a barrier protecting him. That would mean the Qinhuang Kingdom is quite strong. Perhaps they would have a space gate." Jianchen suddenly came to a stop in midair as he hesitated. With a final conclusion, he started to fly toward the Qinhuang Kingdom. Whether or not the kingdom had a space gate, he would give it a try. The Qinhuang Kingdom was only 100,000 meters north of Mercenary City, making the distance from where he was to the kingdom approximately 120,000 kilometers. If he wanted to go there, it would take a considerable amount of time. Using the wind elements in the world to help speed him up, Jianchen began to travel at a pace that was relatively slower than the time when he had used the Heaven's Stolen Fortune and the Illusionary Flash combined. However, it still took him 2 hours in order to travel 1,500 kilometers. In this manner, 24 hours would be enough for him to travel nearly 20,000 kilometers. In 7 days, Jianchen had finally arrived at the border of the Qinhuang Kingdom. These 7 days had been taxing for Jianchen. He had very few breaks, and the tiger cub constantly ate the heavenly resources before falling asleep right after. However, the tiger cub was growing at a decent speed now. His body was already a meter long and already weighed close to 50 kilograms. This, however, made holding the cub to his chest very difficult. Moreover, the cub was already at the level of a Class 2 magical beast. Because of the cub's innate nature of being a heavenly tiger god, it could constantly devour the heavenly resources without a problem, unlike humans who used monster cores. After a while, a human would come across troubles that would shake their foundation and bring about major damages if they did not regulate their usage of monster cores, but this tiger did not have such a limitation. In front of him, there was a 100-meter-tall ancient wall that stretched beyond the lands like a long dragon, giving anyone the impression that they were looking at a mountain range instead. On top of the ancient gates was a gigantic board that said 3 words, Qinhuang Kingdom. This was the stronghold of the Qinhuang Kingdom. As he drew closer, The originally quiet stronghold began to buzz with activity. Floating 1,000 meters high in the air, he could see the ant-like people down below flowing in and out of the stronghold, trading their wares. Jianchen didn't bother with going through the gates and instead flew overhead without bothering to hide himself either. Although his movements had not gone unnoticed by several soldiers, the soldiers did nothing to stop him. Instead, they continued to watch him fly by with envious looks. Heaven Saint Masters were individuals that commanded this privilege of being able to go as they pleased without being stopped. The Qinhuang Kingdom was extraordinarily large, 4 or 5 times larger than the Jessen Kingdom. After traveling for another 10,000 kilometers, he finally reached the capital city, Qinhuang City. This was a king city, a city that was second in rank compared to 7 of the continent's capital cities, but its grandeur was great nonetheless. Flying into Qinhuang City, he drew close to the palace and descended onto the ground while holding the tiger cub. Together, the two continued inside. "Halt, what are you doing?" Several guards at the great Saint Master level instantly moved forward to obstruct Jianchen's path. Jianchen flashed the jade piece and spoke, "I am looking for Qin Ji." "Outrageous, just how dare you call the third prince so casually?" One of the rear guards instantly rebuked. "Third prince?" At this, Jianchen's heart skipped a beat. He had no idea that Qin Ji held such an illustrious position within the kingdom. When one of the vanguards heard Jianchen call out Qin Ji's name, his eyes narrowed dangerously. However, when he saw Jianchen hold up the jade piece, he started with a cry, "That is the Qinhuang jade given from His Majesty." At this, the guard that had cursed out from the back instantly clutched at his neck and retreated without a sound. "My lord, if you would allow me to inspect the jade piece." The vanguard head spoke out courteously, a 180-degree shift from just a moment ago. Without any complaints, Jianchen handed over the jade piece to the guard. That guard accepted it with a polite manner and began to carefully turn and rotate the piece in order to inspect it. After ensuring that it was authentic, he gave it back and spoke, "My lord, if you could give us your name, we will report it to the third prince at once." "Jianchen." "Lord Jianchen, please wait a moment." The guard saluted as he called out for a person to come close. Whispering an order into his ear, he sent the man to go running into the palace straight away. The time Jianchen had spent waiting was not short. After an hour of waiting, a luxuriously dressed youth came walking out of the palace in a hurry. Right behind him were 2 beautiful-looking women. "We greet the third prince." When the youth came out, the dozen great Saint Master guards all immediately knelt down and cupped their hands in greeting. This youth was Qin Ji. All raised then. Qin Ji spoke calmly before looking toward Jianchen. However, when he saw just how he looked, Qin Ji's face was surprised for a moment before laughing. "Brother Jianchen, I had no idea that it was really you. You've really changed this time. Not only is your hair gone, but even your eyebrows and eyelashes too. Did you get roasted by a fire? I could barely recognize you." Hearing this, Jianchen could only chuckle in embarrassment. "The recent weeks have been quite troublesome, so I look rather pitiful right now." After exchanging several words, Qin Ji ushered Jianchen into the palace where a scrumptious feast was laid out in a palace hall made of gold and splendor for his welcome. During the feast, Jianchen and Qin Ji both talked joyously about many things as if they were good friends that had not met in years. Every so often, a great big laughter could be heard from one of the two. After the meal was eaten and the wine was drunk, Jianchen arrived at the heart of the matter. With a grim face, he asked, "Brother Qin Ji, I came to you today for your help on an important matter." Qin Ji had already known Jianchen was not the type of person to visit a temple without a cause, so he laughed. "Brother Jianchen, what is it that you need my help on? If I can do it, then I, Qin Ji, will not hesitate to do so." With an even more serious expression he spoke, "Brother Qin Ji, I am in dire need of a space gate. Would you know whether the Qinhuang Kingdom has one or knows the location of one?" For a moment, Qin Ji stared blankly, but he quickly began to laugh in relief, "And here I thought it was something major." "Brother Jianchen, you were correct in coming to the Qinhuang Kingdom for a space gate. Aside from Mercenary City, Qinhuang City is the only one to have a space gate within 100,000 kilometers. Jian Chen was overjoyed to hear this. Brother Qingji, then I must ask of you, would I be able to have you help me use the space gate? Continuing to laugh, Qingji replied, Brother Jian Chen, you needn't worry. Although the space gate within the Qinghuang kingdom isn't open for foreigners, there are always exceptions to everything. Just let me talk to my father, it shouldn't be a problem. Is that so? Then I'd like to thank Brother Qingji. Jian Chen looked relieved and exhilarated to hear that he would be able to use the space gate to return to the Jessen kingdom. Qingji placed another morsel of food from his chopsticks and began to chew with joy. Speaking with some food still in his mouth, Qingji spoke. However, Brother Jian Chen, I suggest you wait 3 days before using the space gate to leave. Why is that? Jian Chen asked. In 2 days of time, it will be my father's 50th birthday. That day will be extremely lively and many nobles from many clans will come to celebrate. As my friend, I hope that you would celebrate it with me. Chapter 391. Provocation. Jian Chen hadn't any desire to decline Qingji's request, so he agreed to it quite enthusiastically. As a result, Jian Chen came to live within the Qinhuang Palace with the lifestyle of an immortal, but this was not the lifestyle that Jian Chen was accustomed to. At night, he would sleep within one of the guest rooms with several armored guards and even some maids waiting outside. The first were to guard Jian Chen while the latter were to serve him. Even when he walked around the palace, several guards and maids would follow from behind. If it weren't for the fact that Jian Chen knew that all wealthy men had such a privileged life like this, he would have assumed that they were here to supervise him for any dangerous activity toward the palace. On the second day, Qingji had woken up Jian Chen early in the morning before taking him on a stroll around the palace. On the stroll, he pointed out many of the different types of scenery within the place. Jian Chen never brought the tiger cub with him since he didn't wish for the cub to be subjected to the eyes of a lord. So, to ensure that the cub was safe, he would feed it a large amount of heavenly resources and would wait for it to fall into a deep sleep before walking out. The palace was extraordinarily large, and even after walking for almost the entire day, they had only managed to travel 2/3 of it. Some of the remaining areas were forbidden to outsiders, however. In the meanwhile, Qingji had introduced Jian Chen to many different lords and the daughters of the nobles. Their ages weren't all that too far away from the two, but whenever Qingji introduced Jian Chen, he only said that Jian Chen was a friend made from a personal friendship. Thus, the lords gave Jian Chen contemptuous looks. Maintaining a look of resoluteness, Jian Chen said nothing. However, the illustrious daughters of the nobles oftentimes gave him strange looks. Some of them even spoke to Jian Chen with a friendly manner and exposed their intent to be friends clearly. However, this newfound popularity of Jian Chen had earned the ire of even more nobles. The majority of them had already started to give Jian Chen envious and heated looks. Straight after Qingji and Jian Chen had split ways, many of the nobles had already ordered for someone to inquire about Jian Chen's identity and background. In the end, many of them couldn't help but sigh in relief as they heard that Jian Chen wasn't a part of any political power and was an unknown entity. In accordance to their guesses, even if Jian Chen had some type of background, the party behind him was far too inferior to be talked about in public. In the evening, Jian Chen had finished the daytime activities and returned to Qingji's palace to eat a meal. This was his personal abode and was suited with many different facilities for his every need. Just as Qingji and Jian Chen were enjoying their meal, an armored soldier suddenly came into the palace and knelt to the ground respectfully. A report for the third prince. Princess Qin Shuang, Princess Qin Yubing and the Princess of Funan have arrived at the Flowing Clouds Palace. The Flowing Clouds Palace was the name of Qingji's palace. Hearing this, Qingji's eyebrows furrowed together as he muttered, "Strange, what are they up to?" Then, as if coming to a realization, he gave a meaningful look to Jian Chen and laughed. "Then, let them in." "Yes, third prince." The guard spoke before retreating outside. After the guard had left, Qingji toasted a cup with Jian Chen. "Brother Jian Chen, the relationship between the three of them and me is not anything significant. This is the first time they've come to my palace. It seems that it's because of you." Jian Chen cleaned off the wine cup with a bitter smile. "Brother Qingji, you speak so sarcastically." Widening his eyes, Qingji spoke sternly, Sarcasm? I'm not. Jianchen, if you don't believe me, then just wait and see. Very soon, 3 beautiful flower-like women walked into the palace. These 3 young princesses were the 3 princesses he had met in the imperial palace during the day. Princess Qin Shuang gave an unruly wink toward Qin Ji as she spoke. Elder brother, Qin Shuang has grown so much, and yet you're not welcoming me into your palace for the first time? Laughing, Qin Ji spoke. Welcome, welcome. How could I not welcome you? Sisters, Princess of Funan, please come sit and eat. Another 3 sets of dinnerware. The 2 princesses and the Princess of Funan were all outspoken women, but their words were filled with noble auras and they spoke of their thanks to Qin Ji. As the 3 sat down, Qin Yubing cast a glance toward Jianchen before speaking to Qin Ji. Elder brother, you haven't introduced your sister to your friend here. Your sister is very curious. Just how did you 2 meet? Giving a quick wink to Jianchen, he laughed and explained, there's no harm in telling you. Brother Jianchen and I actually met at the gathering of the mercenaries. The 2 of us became close friends straight away. Furthermore, this brother of mine is actually the king of mercenaries. Ah, so he is the Jianchen who won first place at the gathering of the mercenaries. The 3 princesses looked on in shock. Their opinion of Jianchen had changed drastically, their eyes shining strangely bright. Seeing how the princess's eyes were starting to sparkle, Jianchen couldn't help but give a small smile before glaring at Qin Ji. Pretending to not have seen it, Qin Ji's lips curled into a small smile as he continued to eat the meal on the table with a relished gusto. Wah, so you're really strong, Jianchen. If you were able to become the first-place ranker at the gathering of the mercenaries, then that means you're stronger than our elder brother. Come, I, City Yen, toast you. The Princess of Funan immediately raised a glass as she spoke to Jianchen with a chivalrous tone. Following Situ Yan's example, Qin Shuang and Qin Yubing both raised their glasses as well as they toasted Jianchen. Unwilling to shirk away from this, Jianchen stood up and held up his own glass in response to the 3 princess' kind words. Touching cups with the there, he was just about to bring it up to his own mouth before a loud cry came out from outside. Lord Xiaohan, you can't go in. Without the permission of the 3rd prince, no one can enter the Flowing Clouds Palace. Lord Xiaohan, please don't make things difficult for us. Without the 3rd prince's permission, you cannot enter this place. Step aside. Who do you think I am? Visiting the 3rd prince should warrant no notice. All of a sudden, a 25-year-old youth came bursting into the palace in a grandiose manner. He wore a magnificent cyan robe and his eyebrows were creased into a fierce state, giving everyone the idea that he was the type to treat all those under the heavens as someone to be scorned. As he entered, 2 more armored soldiers came running in as an attempt to block him. But because of the high status of the youth, the 2 soldiers didn't dare use violence in order to stop him. 3rd Prince, please forgive us. The 2 soldiers cried out helplessly in forgiveness. Looking expressionlessly at the youth that had just ran in, he waved his hand at the 2 guards. You 2 may leave. Yes, 3rd Prince. The 2 cried out graciously before retreating away. Qin Ji looked at the youth hard and spoke, What business do you have for you to just barge into my Flowing Clouds Palace? Laughing, Xiao Han cupped his hands in greeting. 3rd Prince, tomorrow is His Majesty's 50th birthday. I came here today to discuss of tomorrow's gift to him. If I have disturbed you, then please forgive me for my transgressions. Looking to the side at Qin Shuang, Qin Yubing, and the Princess of Funan, his expression grew flabbergasted as he cried, Ah, the 2 princesses and the Princess of Funan are here too? How coincidental! Dear princesses, what might you 3 be doing here? Xiao Han looked at the 4 cups being raised in the air, but a sight like this didn't require an idiot to figure out the situation. Xiao Han's eyes held an undisguised amount of envy, but he managed to let out a smile. Dear princesses, could it be that you 3 are giving a toast to the 3rd prince's friend? Qin Shuang, Qin Yubing, and the Princess of Funan looked at him with a look of utter loathing as if they were all equally disgusted by him. Qin Yubing didn't even spare him another glance and turned back to Jianchen with the cup raised. Let us toast. Her voice was exceedingly gentle and would cause any male to feel happy to hear it. After her suggestion, Qin Shuang and the Princess of Funan raised their glasses up with a smile. At this sight, Xiao Han's fury burst with envy as he promptly shouted, "This cannot do! 3 princesses worth their weight of gold and all of illustrious backgrounds drinking wine with a stranger? Have you lost your identity?" Straight away, Qin Ji exploded with anger as well. His previously expressionless eyes grew icy cold as he thundered, "Xiao Han, what is the meaning of your words? Could it be that a friend of Qin Ji is not worthy of drinking with these 3 princesses?" Giving an apologetic smile, he spoke with a moderate tone, "Third prince, please quell your anger. What I said is nothing but the truth. These 3 princesses have such an illustrious background, and while the friend of the third prince is no ordinary status, he is neither anyone with any special relations. Thus, it is inappropriate for them to drink with him." Chapter 392. Using chopsticks as weapons. Xiao Han's words caused Qin Ji's face to instantly grow dangerous. But before he could say anything, Qin Yubing spoke out toward Xiao Han with an icy glow. "Xiao Han, whomever we drink with is of no concern to you." "That's correct. Xiao Han, you are overstepping your boundaries. Whatever we wish to do has nothing to do with you," Qin Shuang said. "Xiao Han, you think too highly of yourself. If it were not for your grandfather, you wouldn't even be qualified to step within the Qin Huang Palace. You think that you are amazing, or terrific even so that even elder brother is below your station. Your grandfather has wasted all those magical panaceas, but you are only a great Saint Master. What a waste." The Princess of Funan lashed out verbally, not caring for Xiao Han's honor. Hearing this, Xiao Han's face began to grow darker and his eyes frosted over. Qin Shuang and Qin Yubing were both princesses of grace and beauty, women that he had constantly chased after. Once he had even announced his affection for the 2, but he had been rejected without mercy. Xiao Han did not give up his pursuit because he believed that with his position within the Qin Huang kingdom, it was only a matter of time before he and one of the 2 would be engaged. Having his grandfather propose to His Majesty for this arranged marriage would not be too difficult. He had never thought that the 2 people he had always chased after would unexpectedly go with a stranger unknown to him and speak such unpleasant words for him to hear. To the boisterous noble, this was an unwashable insult. The Princess of Funan had especially spoke words that were as sharp as a sword before piercing into his heart. It was a deep insult to him, causing him to grow speechless and pale. Seeing how offended Xiao Han was, Qin Ji began to smile in delight as he spoke. "Xiao Han, right now my brother and the 3 princesses are eating a meal. I've already planned for my father's present, so there is no need to discuss it. You may leave." With that, Qin Ji looked outside. "Take Xiao Han back to his place." Immediately 2 maids came forward and courteously brought Xiao Han away from the palace. "Lord Xiao Han, if you please." Xiao Han let out a violent snort of air as the anger within his heart combusted. All of his extreme anger and envy was forced straight upon Jian Chen's head and had already reached the highest point of anger. Good. Princess Funan, you say that I am not equal to the third prince. I, Xiao Han, recognize that. That is because compared to the heaven-gifted genius like the third prince, I am inferior, but let me ask you, could that stranger right there be any more amazing? He has only his looks to fall upon. His status, his position, his power, where does he compare to against me? Xiao Han spoke, emphasizing each word. His anger and envy had already caused him to lose all reasoning. The Princess of Funan revealed a sneer as she looked at Xiao Han with scorn. "Xiao Han, your position only came to be because of your grandfather and not your own strength. As for strength," she paused for a moment as her vibrant eyes turned to look at Jian Chen while ignoring Xiao Han. "As for this man's strength, if you cannot compare to the third prince, then you cannot even hope to stand against Jian Chen. If he is nothing, I won't believe that he is stronger than me." Xiao Han snorted in anger as he stared at Jian Chen vehemently. "Kid, I, Xiao Han, challenge you. Do you dare to accept?" Jian Chen's eyebrows furrowed together. This Xiao Han was not at all pleasant to talk to. At this moment, Qin Ji spoke. "Xiao Han, the Princess of Funan speaks the truth. You are not an opponent for my brother, so save yourself the disgrace. You two take Lord Xiaohan back. Qin Ji spoke flatly toward the maids. He too did not have a favorable impression of Xiaohan and didn't bother to honor him. Yes, third prince. Lord Xiaohan, scram. The two maids tried to lead Xiaohan out of the palace, but he immediately pushed them aside and glared dangerously at Jianqin. A strong amount of saint force began to form around his right hand before forming a giant broadsword before pointing the tip at Jianqin. Do you dare accept? Xiaohan's provocation caused Qin Ji to explode with anger. Slamming the table, he exploded, Xiaohan, the Flowing Clouds Palace will not accept this behavior. If you continue this behavior, then don't blame Qin Ji for not sparing your face. Xiaohan had already lost his reasoning to his anger, so the third prince's words had gone in one ear and out the other. Pointing his sword at Jianqin, he repeated, "Do you dare accept?" Impudence. Qin Ji's palm slammed on the table once more in anger as if he was about to prepare to deal with this himself. Jianqin lifted his hand to stop Qin Ji as he stared at Xiaohan. "Brother Qin Ji, if this brother here wishes to challenge me, then I will comply." Qin Ji hesitated for a moment before nodding his head. "Brother Jianqin, then please do be lenient." "Please be what?" Teach him a good lesson. He annoys us every day to death almost." Qin Shuang spoke in discontent. "That's right, I hate him." Qin Yubing had a look filled with disgust. Jianqin looked at Xiaohan. "Make your move then. Let's go outside. This palace is too small and I have no desire to destroy the third prince's palace." He snorted. "No need," Jianqin shook his head. "I don't feel like moving. You may rest assured, we won't be breaking any part of this place." Jianqin's casual attitude toward him caused Xiaohan's anger to explode 3 times over. "How arrogant, I'll make sure you pay the price then." With that, he raised his giant saint weapon and charged straight toward Jianqin. Qin Shuang, Qin Yubing and the Princess of Funan let out a small cry of alarm as they tried to move back to avoid the energy wave. With a snort, Jianqin waved his hand. The chopstick from the table began to float up into the air with an azure and violet glow to it before shooting straight toward Xiaohan. "Ah!" Following a miserable cry of pain, the chopstick burrowed its way into Xiaohan's right arm to where the bone was, rendering mobility in it impossible. "Wah, Jianqin is quite amazing, too amazing, just too amazing. Jianqin, how strong are you if you could use a single chopstick to beat a great Saint Master?" "Jianqin, you absolutely must teach me." The 3 princesses all clapped their hands in adoration of Jianqin. Their eyes were already seeing stars. Seeing the wound on Xiaohan's body, Qin Ji had let out a sigh in relief. This was the man that the Shi family and the Jetta clan had their young lords killed by. Because of that, he was worried that Jianqin would have taken Xiaohan's life in a fit of anger. "Take Xiaohan to treat his wounds." Qin Ji waved his hand for the 2 maids to take him. Xiaohan was unable to take the pain in his arm and could only stare poisonously at Jianqin. Without another look back, he walked out from the palace. Even his honor would not allow him to stay here. After Xiaohan had left, Jianqin looked to Qin Ji. "Brother Qin Ji, just who is this Xiaohan?" Qin Ji sat back down. Xiaohan's position is truly quite unique. Within the palace, there are very few that are equal to the stature of the princes. His grandfather is the imperial tutor and has an illustrious position as a result. His grandfather's status could rival even my father's. Xiaohan's father was also the imperial army's captain 5 years ago. One time when my father had been a target of a raid, it was Xiaohan's father who had taken the blow for an attempt on his life, causing his death. Because of this, my father has come to love Xiaohan dearly, causing his status to rise up to the rank of a prince. So that's the story. What realm has Xiaohan's grandfather reached? Jianqin asked. Heaven Saint Master. He is a 5th cycle Heaven Saint Master. Qin Ji spoke seriously. A genius that has reached the 5th cycle Heaven Saint Master realm. Jianqin muttered with a gentle smile. After the meal, the 3 princesses finally parted paths with Jianqin, allowing him to return to his own place to rest. Sitting on top of the bed to think, he knew that it would be the celebration of His Majesty's birthday. He didn't know just what type of present to give to a king. Aside from a heaven-tier battle skill, heavenly resources, and a Class 6 monster core, Jian Qin had essentially nothing to give. The heaven-tier battle skill was definitely not an item to be gifted, and a Class 6 monster core would not be an item worthy of being gifted to a king of the Qinhuang Kingdom. At this moment, a light went off in Jian Chen's mind as his hand blurred, causing a small pill to appear in his hand. This was the second Class 8 Radiant Spirit pill given to him by Elder Xiu. He wasn't too willing to part with it just yet, so he began to debate on what to do. But this Class 8 Radiant Spirit pill is the only item I could give. Jian Chen muttered. His Radiant Saint Force was far away from being equal to a Class 8 Radiant Saint Force. Plus, with his controlling method, it would be impossible for him to mass-produce them anyways. Chapter 393. Birthday present. The next day, the birthday of the Qinhuang Kingdom's king had officially begun. Jian Chen was woken up early by Qin Ji, and the two left together to congratulate him. The palace was especially lively today. Many influential lords and nobles came to personally congratulate the king on this happy occasion. All sorts of political leaders and major powers came, and in short, everyone was of some importance. The Qinhuang Kingdom held a lot of power and was second only to the three great empires. Within the continent, the Qinhuang Kingdom was already considered one of the highest powers. Thus, every single territory within the kingdom and even the subsiding powers bordering the kingdom had sent men with gifts in order to celebrate this happy occasion. If it were not a lord or princess, it was a prime minister that came. Even several imperial advisors had come to pay their respects. Directly walking toward the main palace hall, Jian Chen and Qin Ji both saw well over 1,000 people standing around. Each one wore gorgeous robes or were figures that were well known throughout the kingdom. A wave of maids could be seen walking around the place with small platters of food in order to serve the guests. "We greet the third prince. We greet the third prince." Upon seeing Qin Ji arrive, many of the people there began to cup their hands in salute with extremely respectful greetings. Greeting them all with a kind smile, Qin Ji responded amiably without any sense of arrogance. Jian Chen followed behind Qin Ji silently. He was perfectly content not being in the limelight and did not wish for the spotlight to be put onto him. The nobles within the palace naturally paid very little attention to him. The vast majority only believed that Jian Chen was an attendant to Qin Ji and didn't spare him a second glance. The other part of the crowd took a neutral stance, but some noticed that Jian Chen was not any ordinary person. He was neither servile or overbearing in nature and carried himself with a graceful manner. Despite his age, he walked with a steady step that even a mountain could not attest to. Some of the stronger men in the room could even tell there was a strong pressure coming from him, causing them to look on in shock. Strange, why is it that I feel as if I've seen that man walking behind the third prince before? Just where did this feeling come from? One of the more richly dressed men stared suspiciously at Jian Chen as he muttered to himself. He was not the only person to have this hunch. Several other men within the palace had this same exact suspicion. They felt that he was a stranger, but they still couldn't shake off this feeling. "Brother Jian Chen, feel free to go rest somewhere, I still have several people to greet." Qin Ji spoke apologetically toward Jian Chen. Today was the 50th birthday of his father, so the king could not greet any of the people himself. However, these men were all high-ranking people, some from the surrounding kingdoms. They couldn't be received by just anyone, so the children would have to take up the mantle. Even this was considered to be a good opportunity for the prince to get to know people. It was with that excuse that they could make a foundation for political support when the time came to fight for the throne. Jian Chen was neither a child nor an ignorant farmer from the thatched villages. He understood clearly just how important this gathering was for Qin Ji and did not argue. Taking a small snack to eat, he began to stroll to the closest corner of the room before enjoying the delicious-tasting pastries. Just then, a cyan-robed middle-aged man sat down right next to Jian Chen. Nodding with a smile toward the eating Jian Chen, he spoke, "Fellow brother, have we seen each other somewhere before?" Jian Chen lifted his head to look at the man. Seeing that the man was unfamiliar to him, he shook his head. "You must be mistaken. Perhaps I look like someone else?" Still skeptical, The man nodded his head. Perhaps so. My name is Tai Muzhuang. What might your name be? Jian Chen laughed. This one is just a nobody and not even a member of the Qin Huang kingdom. My name won't be recognizable by sire even if this one speaks of it. Jian Chen finished off the pastry and left to go get a new one. After Jian Chen had left, Tai Muzhuang narrowed his eyes in doubt. An unknown nobody? Is that really the truth? Why do I feel that I've seen you from somewhere? Even with his mutterings, he had been unable to think of an answer, so Tai Muzhuang had no other choice but to leave as well. His Majesty the King has arrived. At that moment, a long drawn-out voice could be heard announcing the arrival of the king. The noise within the palace instantly died out as everyone turned to look in the direction the cry came from. Everyone could see a golden, purple dragon-robed middle-aged man walking into the palace with an intimidating air. Right behind him was a single elder with a crane-styled hairdo. The king was turning 50 years old, but his appearance made him look as if he was 40 instead. He was smiling widely with eyes that flickered with vigor and wisdom. The Qin Huang kingdom's king had 12 children. 7 of them were princes and the other 5 were princesses. The eldest was already 30 years old and the youngest was only 6. At this moment, those 12 children were walking right behind him. Greet His Majesty and wish him a long life and glory to the Qin Huang kingdom. The entire palace began to speak out the words, "Long live and 1,000 years." Within the Tianyuan continent, these were the highest words of celebration that generally only the nobility of countries could hear. That was because 1,000 years was the lifespan of a heaven saint master. Saint rulers and saint kings weren't even able to live past 10,000 years and were generally within the thousands. Afterward, everyone began to give the gifts they had prepared. The vast majority of the items were all vastly valuable, some of them were even beyond the scope of what money could be. Apart from this, there was plenty of antique pottery and vases from several people as well as plenty of heavenly resources that were aged well over 1,000 years. After the majority of the men had presented their gifts, Jian Chen came walking forward with a purple and gold box. Striding forward, he presented it to the king with a smile. There is a Class 8 Radiant Spirit pill within this box. I present this to His Majesty in congratulations on his birthday. Jian Chen spoke succinctly without any flowery words. A Class 8 Radiant Spirit pill? I've heard only a 7th class Radiant Saint Master would be able to produce such a pill. It is a pill that is fully deserving of being called a true healing Catholicon. Not only can it purify any venom, but it could even rescue a person from the jaws of death. A Class 8 Radiant Spirit pill can be rarely seen within the entire continent. This would make even hermits drool at the mouth to have such a life-saving treasure. Upon hearing the words, Class 8 Radiant Spirit pill, the entire palace began to burst into commotion and admiration at this item. They all looked at the purple and golden box within Jian Chen's hands. Each one believed that such a high-leveled Radiant Spirit pill had gone extinct since the only Radiant Saint Masters capable of making one were as rare as a phoenix feather. Furthermore, creating just one of these would require a tremendous amount of energy from them. The Class 8 Radiant Spirit pill had moved even the king. If he wanted to obtain some sort of heavenly resource or any other priceless treasure, it was not at all difficult for him. A Class 8 Radiant Spirit pill was a different matter. That was because items that could save one's life were far too priceless to be obtained. Following a stare from the king, a white-robed elder immediately came forth from the crowd. Taking the box from Jian Chen's hands, he took out the bottle from within and then began to inspect the thumb-sized pill from it. This elder was a Radiant Saint Master that would be able to tell how rich the Radiant Saint force was within the pill. After making sure he wasn't wrong, the elder's face lit up in delight as he carefully put the pill back into the box and cupped his hands to the king. Your Majesty, this is truly a Class 8 Radiant Spirit pill. The elder's voice held an emotional tone to it since he knew just how rare it was to see such a high-leveled pill. Standing right behind the king, Qin Ji sent an appreciative glance to Jian Chen. Even he knew just how priceless a Class 8 Radiant Spirit pill was. For Jian Chen to unexpectedly gift such a pill to the king, the meaning would be loud and clear, allowing Qin Ji to feel happy. Even the other people standing by the king's side began to change their opinion of Jian Chen by smiling and nodding. A Class 8 Radiant Spirit pill couldn't be given by just anyone. This action from Jian Chen had inadvertently solidified his status among everyone in the crowd. Hearing the confirmation from the elder, the king immediately began to laugh as he regarded Jian Chen in a new light. "Remarkable, brother, it only takes one look to know that you are a giant among the men here. I admit to knowing no noble that would relinquish such a priceless gift, but I am truly grateful." "Father, he is called Jian Chen, a friend I have made from the outside." Before Jian Chen could even say anything, Qin Ji spoke out respectfully to his father. As soon as Qin Ji spoke, several other men began to cry out, "Jian Chen? He's Jian Chen. It's no wonder I thought he looked familiar. Could he be that very same Jian Chen who became the king of mercenaries at the last gathering of the mercenaries? His strength was on par with a heaven saint master. It's no wonder I felt that there was something to him. I've got it. He's that Jian Chen who became the king of mercenaries. I was there for the event, so no wonder I had thought he was familiar looking. It's because his hair is nearly gone so that I was unable to recognize him. Even his eyelashes are gone." Chapter 394. Attacks that influence even the nobility. Hearing the chatter regarding Jian Chen, the influential officials all had flabbergasted expressions on their faces as they stared at Jian Chen one by one in disbelief. Everyone knew that the king of mercenaries was named Jian Chen, but those who had personally seen what Jian Chen had looked like were a small amount. No one could have imagined that Jian Chen was actually very young, even younger than the third prince. In simple math, Jian Chen spent less time cultivating than the third prince, but he was even stronger than him. This led everyone to believe that Jian Chen was a genius of unsurpassed prowess. The king of the Qinhuang kingdom boomed with laughter as he looked at Jian Chen with surprise. "Good. Very good. I did not judge you wrongly then. Jian Chen, you are truly a giant among men if you were able to become the king of mercenaries at such a young age. Your future has no limits, and my son will benefit greatly from being acquainted with you." Xiao Han stood within the crowd of people with a look of utter fury at Jian Chen. Biting his lip, he muttered angrily under his breath, "I didn't think you would be that nonsensical king of mercenaries. It doesn't matter who you are, Xiao Han will not let you off easily." Hearing the mutters of Xiao Han, a cyan-robed middle-aged man asked, "Xiao Han, could this be the one that humiliated and injured you yesterday?" "Correct, Uncle Mu Jie, you must help me teach him a lesson. Otherwise, this is something I will never be able to swallow." Xiao Han spoke. Mu Jie was an apprentice to his grandfather and was close to him. Mu Jie's eyebrows creased together as he thought, "I'm afraid it won't be easy. I had no idea that he would be the king of mercenaries. Although I do not know of his strength, he surely has to be stronger than the third prince by a good amount. Furthermore, he has earned the favor His Majesty. If I were to act against him, I would earn the ire of His Majesty in return. Uncle Mu Jie, he is only so old. Even if the third prince is no match to him, it doesn't mean that Jian Chen may have used some sort of way to scrape out an unexpected success to become the king of mercenaries. You could challenge him in public and then humiliate him. As for His Majesty, I will naturally let my grandfather take care of that." Xiao Han spoke. Nodding his head slightly, Mu Jie spoke, "Fine, I was wanting to test his strength anyways. I'd like to see just how strong the rumors say the king of mercenaries is." After knowing that Jian Chen was the king of mercenaries, the king's attitude toward him was far more friendly. On the contrast, when the other princes had heard that Jian Chen was the friend of the third prince, they had all contorted with annoyance. Only two of the younger princes had been able to keep their cool as if the matter had nothing to do with them. Jian Chen and the king managed to exchange several more words before returning to the crowd. However, at this moment, every single noble and major powers had begun to treat Jian Chen vastly different from before. Charging at him, each one of them tried to get within Jian Chen's good graces. That was because in the past, every single king of the mercenaries had been at the very least a heaven saint master. At the highest, they had been able to make the breakthrough to become a saint ruler. When it came to these people, Jianchen only politely responded to them without any deeper meaning to his words. Suddenly, a grand voice could be heard reverberating through the halls, causing all of the noise in the hall to stop instantly. Your Majesty, our Qinhuang kingdom was founded by the military since the ancient past and defended our country with our military might. Today is the birthday of His Majesty, but why is there a shortage of martial might? This humble servant's hand itches and wishes to compare notes with the king of mercenaries, Jianchen. At the same time, I wish to use this show of martial prowess to be the gift to His Majesty. Your Majesty, if you could please allow this. Everyone's head began to turn as they looked at a cyan-robed man kneel to the ground as he spoke respectfully to the king. Hearing this, the king had a faint smile as he introduced Jianchen to him. Jianchen, this is the imperial army captain, Muzhaya. The king had neither denied nor accepted Muzhaya's request and instead gave the right to Jianchen. In the end, he too wanted to see just how strong Jianchen was. Laughing, Jianchen strode forward and cupped his hands. If Captain Muzhaya wishes to compare notes with this one and put on a show for the king, then let us make this a great present to the king. Laughing joyously, the king spoke, "Very well. If this is your answer, then let us all cheer you both on." With that, the king and an elder walked out of the halls with the entire crowd following after them. Within a large open space, everyone gathered around to watch Jianchen and Muzhaya fight and were in an extremely jubilant mood. A fight between the imperial army captain and the king of mercenaries would definitely be a glorious spectacle. And in everyone's heart, they had wished to see just who would be the winner of the two. Only a few men had seen the king of mercenaries fight, and so they had a profound smile on their faces as they watched. Muzhaya held his cyan-colored pike in his hands as he stared at Jianchen fixedly. Although Jianchen was quite young, being the king of mercenaries did not give Muzhaya the luxury of underestimating him. Jianchen stood 30 meters away with a smile. Staring at the captain, he spoke, "Captain Muzhaya, if you would please start it off." Seeing how Jianchen had not yet taken out his saint weapon to fight, Muzhaya's eyebrows creased together with a small glint of fury. In his eyes, seeing Jianchen barehanded was an insult to him. Casting a cold glare and a snort, his legs stamped across the ground as he flew toward Jianchen. At the same time, the pike in his hands began to glow with the wind-attributed saint force as he thrust it forward. Jianchen's face had a slight smile as his right leg stamped on the ground. A thumb-sized stone suddenly shot up before being grabbed by Jianchen with ease. His hand shook for a moment before the pebble then began to glow with an azure and violet light. The pebble shot straight toward the incoming Muzhaya. Ding! A crisp sound could be heard as the thumb-sized stone collided against the tip of Muzhaya's pike. Following the inconceivably strong impact, Muzhaya's arm and pike began to tremble from the force. Looking greatly shocked, the force of the blow had caused Muzhaya to stop for a moment before staggering backwards several steps. Both of the hands that were carrying the pike were shaking violently and a small amount of blood could be seen from the web of his hand. Turning pale with fright, Muzhaya turned his head to look at Jianchen. Despite all of his strength, a pebble thrown by Jianchen had been able to force him back. This was far too much for Muzhaya to accept. Seeing how a single stone thrown by Jianchen had caused Muzhaya's hand to bleed, the spectators had gone into an uproar. Each one looked on in disbelief. This display of strength had been nearly as great on their hearts as it was for Muzhaya. Could this be a battle skill of Jianchen's? Some people began to ask. Even the king sighed in admiration. He looked at Jianchen in disbelief for a moment before turning to give a look to the elder beside him. A single pebble had been enough for the captain of the imperial army to stagger backward. This was more than enough to let the king know that Jianchen's strength was far stronger than he initially thought. An Earth Saint Master would not be enough to gauge Jianchen's true strength, so he planned on bringing out a stronger person to do so instead. The elder standing next to the king nodded before walking out. "Jianchen, allow this old man to try." Before giving Jianchen any option, the elder transformed into a blurry image as he charged toward Jianchen. Jianchen's lips curled up with a faint smile as he pointed outward with a finger, causing an azure and violet sword chi to shoot toward the elder. Knowing that Jianchen was exceedingly strong, he didn't dare underestimate him. Forming a fist, he lashed out against the sword chi with a rippling amount of fire saint force. The sword chi was scattered apart by the elder, but there was an eye-catching wound left on top of the elder's hand. Looking at the wound on his hand, the elder's face grew dim. Swiping at the air, the fire element within the world began to congregate around his hand before instantaneously forming a giant sword of fire. At this sight, Jianchen revealed a sneer before he raised his right hand as well. The fire elements in the world began to gather in his right hand at a faster rate than the elder and formed a giant sword of fire. No matter if it was color or by temperature, Jianchen's sword seemed much stronger than the elder's. He has control of the energy of the world. How surprising is that? This is the magical power of controlling the energy of the world. Could he have reached the Heaven Saint Master realm? Jianchen's act of controlling the energy of the world had caused everyone to turn pale with fright. At this moment, everyone had truly believed that Jianchen was many times stronger than Mujia. Even the lords and leaders had their eyes wide open as they look at Jianchen in silent disbelief. A Heaven Saint Master wasn't a new sight to them. However, a Heaven Saint Master this young was something they had never heard of before. How is this possible? Jianchen has made the breakthrough to become a Heaven Saint Master? Even Qin Ji had a look of surprise as he muttered to himself. The king of the Qinhuang kingdom let out a breath of air as he slowly calmed his nerves. At this moment, he could feel his heart beating rapidly at this sight. A 20-something-year-old Heaven Saint Master would surely ripple across the Tianyuan continent if news were to get out. Is he truly as young as he looks? The Qinhuang kingdom's king spoke with some doubt. Chapter 395. Midair Showdown. When the elder saw Jianchen form a sword seemingly out of mid-air, his face instantly blanched in shock. But without pause, he condensed his own fire-red great sword and went at Jianchen to try and slash him. When the elder swung out, so did Jianchen. Waving his right hand, the sword instantly shot toward the elder. Bang! When both fire-red swords collided against each other, the two swords suddenly exploded with energy, causing an explosive bang to be heard as the entire sky washed over with flames. All around the two combatants, balls of fire could be seen flying everywhere at high speeds and high temperature. Run! Get back! Protect His Majesty! The surrounding spectators instantly spread out as they flew backward, while at the same time, saint force of every color appeared to form a protective armor for themselves and anyone of major importance. Seeing the sudden spread of the fire, even the king of the Qinhuang kingdom was surprised. But a white figure suddenly shot towards him as a cyan-colored man brought both the king and himself into the air by using his wind-attributed saint force. With a grab of the king's shoulder, the two of them flew away from the fire. Movement could be seen coming from everywhere as an Earth Saint Master began to spread out his saint force all over the palace. Several armored soldiers immediately flew forward in a hurried manner to form a protective line. At the same time, four elders and two middle-aged men strode forward from the crowd and circled around the ring of fire. Raising their hands, each one used a fierce blast of wind to curb and control the fire. The sea of flames had already concealed both Jianchen and the elder he was fighting, but even within the flames, their movements were not hindered in the slightest. Just as the flames sent flying back at them from the 6 men earlier, it was suddenly stopped by an invisible force just 1 meter away. Allow this old man to fight you from above. The elder spoke as he flew 500 meters up into the air, transforming into a speck the size of an ant. The faint element of fire could be seen enveloping his entire body. Not willing to admit defeat, Jianchen began to use the wind element in the world and gathered it around his body using his mind. Flying straight into the air, he quickly got within 100 meters of the floating elder. What? Why you can control the wind element as well? The elder spoke thunderstruck as he looked at the wind swivel around Jianchen's body. The cyan-colored light surrounding Jianchen's body had not gone unnoticed by the audience below. Each one of them cried out in shock, but not as loud as the several hidden Heaven Saint Masters within the crowd. It was almost as if they had seen a monster as their faces contorted in shock. How is this possible? He was clearly a fire-attributed Saint Force cultivator. Just how is he using the wind attribute? Could he be a wind-attributed Saint Force user instead of a fire-attributed Saint Force user? Impossible. There has never been anyone being able to use two different elements. He must be using some sort of strange method. Jianchen, could it be that you are able to control both the fire and wind element? The elder questioned in astonishment. Smiling, Jianchen replied honestly, "Correct, I am truly able to control both the fire and wind element." "No, that's not possible. Just how could you control two elements? There has never been a single person who could do the same before on the continent." The man cried out. "There has never been anything that cannot be done. There are still many profound mysteries to the world. All that we know are merely the ones we have stepped into and understood." Although seeing Jianchen take control of two elements in the world was extremely surprising, the elder calmed himself down quickly. "You speak correctly, there are still many things unknown to us in the world. It seems this old man has forgotten himself." Pausing his breath, the fire sword appeared in his hand once more. "Today, I shall find out for myself just how strong a wielder of two elements is." Smiling, Jianchen raised both of his hands. Immediately, all of the pebbles within the nearby pond began to fly up as if a strange force was pulling it. Breaking through the water, the pebbles all floated around Jianchen's body ominously. What is the meaning of this? How did the stones suddenly fly up into the air? What power is this? How is he doing it? At this even stranger sight, everyone could only gasp in surprise. Behind two Heaven Saint Master Guards, the Qinhuang Kingdom King tilted his head to the sky. "This Jianchen is truly beyond what I imagined. At such a young age, he has reached the Heaven Saint Master realm. A genius like this comes only once every 1,000 years. One of the Heaven Saint Masters looked surprised at that. "Why stop at 1,000 years? A talent like his comes every 10,000 years. If his skill grows without any complication, he will be a saint ruler at the very least. Becoming a saint king would be of no problem to him." Hearing this, the king paused in surprise. Even the princes standing behind the king were frightened at this. Struggling to maintain their composure, they looked at Qin Ji with a mixture of admiration and jealousy. As for Qin Ji, he had personally seen Jianchen's amazing prowess with his own eyes before. His mind had already thought of Jianchen to be stronger than what his own words could say. By now, the Heaven Saint Master had thrown away all notions of belittling Jianchen. Mustering all of his strength, the flames on his sword had begun to evaporate even the air around it. Jianchen floated in midair as steady as a mountain as the wind blew past his figure ferociously. Both of his hands had already formed a fist right in front of his chest as the pebbles floating around him began to meld into the form of a sword that radiated with azure and violet sword chi. Chapter 396, Imperial Protector, Watch My Sword. The elder shouted as he brought the giant sword down toward Jianchen with an inferno replacing the blade. Jianchen's eyes flashed with a tint of the azure and violet shades of color. Right in front of him, the giant sword made from pebbles began to glow even brighter with the same color before shooting straight toward the elder. Bang! Another loud explosion could be heard as the elder's giant sword and the sword made from the pebbles clashed against each other. The flame-like essence from the elder's sword began to slough off in a substantial amount, each piece transforming into shooting stars that spread out in every direction before exploding like a firework would. The attack of the elder had caused some of the pebbles to be crushed into dust, but the remaining part of the sword continued its momentum and flew straight for the elder. With this blocking his forward momentum, the elder suddenly came to a stop as he heard the ear-whistling sound of the sword continue to fly. Staring seriously, he brandished his own sword and slashed out 3 more times with the flame sword, leaving behind an amazing streak of fire from its path as it struck against the pebbles. Ordinarily, the pebbles flying straight for the elder would have been so weak that they would have disintegrated into dust. However, because of the azure and violet sword chi, the pebbles had been hardened beyond their normal durability. So when they crashed against the elder's sword, several explosions could be heard from the resulting strikes. By now, the elder's body was like the flame and the pebbles the moths. Under Jian Chen's control, the pebbles struck at the elder in every direction possible. Just what is this devilish power? The elder thought to himself. His entire body was already covered with the fire attributed Saint Force as he continued to swat the pebbles away while trying to find a way out. It was not like he had no desire to strike at Jian Chen, but the azure and violet sword chi surrounding the pebbles reinforced them so much that it was just too much for him to deal with. Even with the Saint Force covering his body, it was hard to defend against the strikes. With the constant barrage, just moving was difficult enough. Clenching both hands in midair, all of the nearby fire elements in the world suddenly congregated within Jian Chen's hands. In a flash, they transformed to become two swords with fire as the blade. Right as they formed, they transformed into a single streak of fire as it shot toward the elder with blinding speed and a fiery heat. The heat had been so intense that the surrounding air had turned pink from the distortion. Staring seriously at the two blades shooting at him, the elder brought his own sword up and slammed down on the both of them. Once more, flames burst out from the explosion and plumes of fire washed over the sky like a series of fireworks. The entire sky was replaced with a sea of flames as they spread from the elder. At this moment, the temperature in the surrounding area had already scaled up to a degree where even the king and the spectators felt as if they were in a steamer basket and were being steamed alive. Jian Chen's eyes continued to glow resplendently with a divine glow as the wind began to pick up in the area as if a howling storm was approaching. The sounds were like the screams of ghosts and blew the flames that were flying toward Jian Chen back toward the elder's position. In an instant, the elder was concealed by the flames. Jian Chen knew all too well that a flame of this magnitude would do nothing to a Heaven Saint masterclass expert. At best, the elder would be worse for wear, but nothing more. Clutching at the sky once more, another sword of fire formed before flying at the elder's position. In an instant, the sword disappeared within the sea of flames without a trace. In the next, a fierce explosion could be heard as the flames suddenly blew apart. A white figure could be seen flying out from the fire. It was the elder. There was no serious damage that could be seen on his body, but he looked disheveled and his breathing was ragged while his clothes were already threatening to tear at the seams. In all, the elder no longer looked as refined and calm as he did before the fight. Floating in midair, the elder made no move to attack and instead continued to observe Jian Chen. Jian Chen made no move either. He knew that the elder was only testing for his strength and was not actually fighting to kill him in a do or die match. The flames quickly receded from the skies, causing the temperature to drop as well. At the same time, the elder had a strange look on his face as if hesitating before finally sighing. This old man admits his loss. Smiling, Jian Chen cupped his hands together. Senior, you must be joking. This was only a test for my strength. Your true strength was not even shown completely. If you were to go all out, the conclusion would have been entirely different. The elder waved his hands dismissively. A loss is a loss. This old man is not someone that cannot accept a loss. Although I did not go all out, the amount of strength you're holding back would be stronger than mine still. Continuing to smile, Jian Chen said no more in opposition to the man and slowly descended to the ground. The two landed on the ground at the same time in front of the crowd, but not a single voice could be heard. Not even the king nor the relatives of the king dared make a sound and instead chose to look at the handsome face of the youngster in front of them. Not only was Jian Chen the youngest Heaven Saint master they knew, but his strength was also beyond anyone's imagination. Even one of the imperial advisors had admitted defeat. At this moment, everyone felt their own strength completely dominated by Jian Chen. At the age of 20-something, he had already become a Heaven Saint master. By the age of 50, or even 100, just what realm would he step into? Wah, Jian Chen, you are truly amazing to be able to reach the Heaven Saint Master realm. Suddenly from the crowd, the Princess of Funan began to clap and speak her praise. Princess Qin Shuang and Qin Yubing both looked at Jian Chen with a strange look. Aside from those three, the other rich daughters of the other families all began to stare at Jian Chen with a look of adoration and worship. Some of the daughters had even looked utterly entranced by him. Although Jian Chen's hair had all been burnt away, he still retained his handsome looks. Combined with his young age, power as a heaven saint master, and the honor given to him by the king, he was the Prince Charming to all of the rich daughters here. Ah, good, good, good. Jian Chen's strength has opened everyone's eyes here. Jian Chen, since you are the friend of Qin Ji, there is no need to see you as an outsider. If this king may, would I be so bold to call you a nephew? The king laughed merrily. Qin Ji had a gentle smile on his as he stood behind the king. At this moment he could feel a strange feeling of happiness along with some shock. Jian Chen being a heaven saint master was something he was shocked by as well. That was because with Jian Chen's actual age, this was a world-shaking revelation. Accepting the goodwill expressed by the king, Jian Chen accepted this without hesitation. This was something that was more beneficial than harmful, so he cupped his hands together. It would be an honor for this one. Looking pleased, the king spoke with a great smile. Now that this battle is finished, let us all go back. Nephew Jian Chen, let us return to the palace. With that, he led Jian Chen with a friendly wave back toward the palace. On the way, he asked about Jian Chen's well-being and constantly treated him well. Hidden within the crowd, Xiao Han could only look at Jian Chen blankly. After a while, his entire face suddenly slackened. No way. There's no way. Just how is he a heaven saint master? This has to be an illusion. Xiao Han sputtered as he muttered to himself. He was just in too much disbelief. At that moment, the still pale Mu Jie walked up to Xiao Han. Seeing the slackened face of surprise, Mu Jie sighed with some blame to his voice. You've offended a person, someone you cannot afford to offend. Even Imperial Advisor Pu Ta wasn't his opponent. It seems that even your grandfather would not be able to win against him. This won't do. I must report this situation to your grandfather. Hearing this, Xiao Han's face blanched as he pulled on Mu Jie's arm hopefully. Uncle Mu Jie, do you think grandfather will try and get justice for me? Hearing this, Mu Jie whipped around to look at Xiao Han fiercely. How could you be so muddle-headed? Don't bring up this again and be careful of what you say. Jian Chen is a heaven saint master with unparalleled skill. He has curried favor with His Majesty and wouldn't be threatened by your grandfather at all. If you don't know what it means to repent, then even your grandfather will be hurt by this. Turning white, Xiao Han asked with a trembling voice, Uncle Mu Jie, what do you think I should do then? Sighing, Mu Jie spoke, You should go apologize to Jian Chen. I must report this matter to your grandfather. By the end, I hope we transform this major problem into no problem. Quickly, everyone returned to the previous palace hall. The king led Jian Chen to the front before sitting on the imperial throne. Ordering the maid to bring a luxurious chair for Jian Chen to sit on, he began to treat him as if Jian Chen was a treasured son. This conduct toward Jian Chen had not gone unnoticed by the other princes. Each one began to smile and express their goodwill toward him, as if it was only right that Jian Chen should have been treated like this to begin with. Unable to conceal his glee, the king of the Qinhuang kingdom looked around before clearing his throat. Now that everyone is here, your king would like to order a decree. As of now, I appoint Jian Chen to be the imperial protector. Does anyone object? Chapter 397. Status unable to conceal his glee, the king of the Qinhuang kingdom looked around before clearing his throat. Now that everyone is here, your king would like to order a decree. As of now, I appoint Jian Chen to be the imperial protector. Does anyone object? As the king gave his decree, the entire hall descended into a quiet calm. Each one looked at the king in a mixture of astonishment and disbelief. An imperial protector and imperial advisor were two different ranks. An imperial protector was higher in power and authority than an imperial advisor. An imperial protector could mobilize the army at a whim and even order the imperial advisors to manage any affair. Another terrifying power that an imperial protector had was the ability to behead an incapable ruler or any incompetent official. This was to say that their power was even above that of the nobility of the kingdom. The king of the Qinhuang kingdom had seen what potential Jian Chen had, so he appointed him to be the imperial protector. The decree of the king not only stunned the audience, but even Qin Ji, who was standing next to him. There was a look of utter shock on his face and a blankness had entered his mind. Half a moment later, the silence was broken as a white-haired elder came forward with his hands cupped together. "Your Majesty, this cannot do. Jian Qin is deserving of a spot as an imperial advisor, but an imperial protector is not appropriate. Prime Minister Kirill speaks correctly. The title of an imperial protector is far too high for a decision to be made this quickly. It would be more proper for Jian Qin to take the title as an imperial advisor for now." Another elder spoke. "Your Majesty, the title of an imperial protector cannot be made too rashly. This should be talked with the entire imperial advisors or perhaps even some of the revered imperial protectors to see if he is qualified." Another simply dressed person spoke. This man exuded a large amount of air and was a general that commanded plenty of power himself. "Your Majesty, a countless stream of opposition could be heard from the audience. Although Jian Qin was a genius they had never seen before, the title of an imperial protector was truly far too great of a position. Many of the nobles were especially vocal. With Jian Qin's age, they didn't dare let him be an imperial protector. At the same time, there were also a large amount of supporters of the king. At that moment, 20 people suddenly appeared in the palace. The majority of them were elders, but some were middle-aged and 3 were 30-year-old women. These people quietly walked up to the back of the palace without a word or anyone noticing them. When the king saw the group of people standing behind the crowd, he revealed a small smile. "That's correct. The title of an imperial protector is not something a king could appoint. This power goes to the imperial advisors and 4 imperial protectors themselves." With that, the king stood up from his throne. "With that, I would like to invite the imperial advisors to investigate. Does Jian Qin have the ability to be one? I agree to appoint Jian Qin to be an imperial protector." One of the elders spoke out in agreement. Smiling, he cupped his hands together in salute to Jian Qin. "I pay my respects to the imperial protector." "Your Majesty, with just a few imperial advisors agreeing, it will be hard to convince the crowd. If His Majesty wishes for Jian Qin to be an imperial protector, then all of us imperial advisors need to consent." An elder spoke. Smiling, the king replied, "Commander Shu speaks the truth. Now then, imperial advisors, what do you think? We all give our consent to allow Jian Qin to be an imperial protector." An elderly voice called out from the back, causing everyone to turn around. When the crowd saw just who these 20 people were, they all looked at them with shocked eyes and open mouths. Each one of these people held influential positions and were all imperial advisors in their own rights. At this current moment, all of the imperial advisors were already gathered here. The group of 20 imperial advisors began to walk forward, the entire crowd splitting apart to form a road for them. In a quick moment, they arrived right in front of Jian Qin before everyone cupped their hands. "We pay our respects to the imperial protector." At this sight, the king of the Qin kingdom began to laugh without holding back. On the contrary, the crowd continued to look on in shock as if trying to comprehend what had just happened. One of the imperial advisors spoke out loud, "Everyone doesn't need to worry. The appointment of Jian Qin to become an imperial protector was also approved by the 4 imperial protectors as well. The 20 of us just recently made contact with those 4 before we gathered here. If anyone has any suspicions, they can go to any of the imperial protectors for proof." With that, the entire audience began to grow noisy once more. The imperial advisors of the Qin kingdom were all Heaven's Saint Masters, so when they saluted Jian Qin, he was knocked in for a loop. At a loss for what to do, Jian Qin didn't know what to think. In no time at all, he had been inducted to become one of the imperial protectors of the Qin kingdom. "Your Majesty, this one's experience is still quite lacking. I'm afraid that I may fail to please." Jian Qin bowed to the king. Laughing, the king replied, "Nephew Jian Qin, appointing you as the imperial protector is something that the 4 imperial protectors have consented to. With this king cannot make any decision." There was some hesitation on his face. Becoming an imperial protector for the Qin kingdom was no small matter. However, because of how fast the situation had developed, Jian Qin had no time to figure the benefits and detriments and could not come to a resolution. Seeing the look of hesitation on Jian Chen's face, Qin Ji's own face had a minute amount of worry to it. He and Jian Chen had only a regular relationship for now, but he was absolutely willing to have Jian Chen be an imperial protector since it would be a tremendously good thing for him. But this expression from Qin Ji had gone unnoticed by Jian Chen since he was currently stuck in a dilemma. Although the title of an imperial protector was indeed high, but he didn't wish to be tied down by it. The entire palace began to grow in noise as everyone looked toward Jian Chen. Xiao Han, on the other hand, had gone as white as paper before shaking all over. The authority of an imperial protector far outstripped the powers of his grandfather. It could even be said his grandfather would be a subordinate to Jian Chen. Qin Ji's face grew more and more panicked as he feared that Jian Chen would not accept the title of an imperial protector. In the end, he couldn't hold it in anymore and spoke. Jian Chen, being an imperial protector of our Qinhuang kingdom means that you would be able to use the space gate of our kingdom without any limitations and our resources. Even your authority would be comparable to the king. Upon hearing the ability of being able to use the space gate, Jian Chen's heart skipped a beat before he spoke. Your Majesty, if I were to become an imperial protector, would I have to limit my movements? Of course not. Nephew Jian Chen, you will not be limited in your travels as our imperial protector. We only wish that in our moment of need, you will come to help us and to not work against us. The king smiled. With that, Jian Chen came to a conclusion. This was a deal that was almost all benefit with no detriment. With the Qinhuang kingdom's strength, the chance of it being in danger was practically nil. With that thought in mind, Jian Chen no longer hesitated and agreed to be an imperial protector. We pay our respects to the imperial protector. After Jian Chen's consent, every single person within the audience began to swoop in to give their respects. The title of an imperial protector was extremely illustrious and was far more powerful than even the lord and sometimes even the king of the kingdom. With at least half of the imperial protector's agreement, a noble could be removed from his position without even the king being able to overturn it or risk a large war. From this, it could be seen that an imperial protector was a powerful entity. Afterward, the nobles and the imperial advisors began to congratulate and pull Jian Chen into their good graces. Although Jian Chen's young age had caused everyone to belittle him at first, his potential was not ignorable to anyone. His future was something no one would be able to predict, and even the 4 imperial protectors were astounded by him. Jian Chen becoming an imperial protector made Qin Ji extremely happy. His smile could illuminate the night and could not be masked. Jian Chen's appearance had truly taken the spotlight for the events of today. It was originally a day of celebration for the king's 50th birthday, but instead of the king being the main character, the great winds had been stolen by Jian Chen. However, the king wasn't sad in the very least. The smile on his face could not be said to be unhappy at all. For the king to be able to make a great genius become their imperial protector, this was a great honor for the Qinhuang kingdom. In the future, it could be possible that the Qinhuang kingdom would be able to stand alongside the 3 great empires of the Tianyuan continent. Chapter 398. A gorgeous exit. The 50th birthday celebration for the king of the Qinhuang kingdom quickly came to the end. When the nobles and officials had all bade their farewells to Jian Chen, he immediately went for his own room. Now that Jian Chen was an imperial protector for the Qinhuang kingdom, his status was far different than from when he first came. He had been given a splendid new palace to live in called the Qin Heaven Palace. The Qin Heaven Palace was where only imperial protectors were permitted to live in. Not only was it grand in scale, but even the interior furnishing and arrangements were superior to Qin Ji's flowing cloud palace. Carrying the still sleeping heavenly tiger god, Jian Chen followed the palace made to the Qin Heaven Palace. Looking all around at the splendor of the palace, Jian Chen was momentarily speechless. The Qin Heaven Palace was so splendid that Jian Chen could swear that he had never seen such a grand palace before. Great imperial protector, allow this servant to help you bathe and your other needs. The beautiful maids accompanying Jian Chen spoke with expectant faces. The female maids were all carefully selected by the king and were around the age of 20 as well. Not only were they extremely beautiful, but they were also virgins. Still looking around the resplendent palace, he waved a hand toward the maids behind him. "You may leave." "Great Imperial Master, could it be this servant is not suitable for your needs?" The maids cried out miserably to Jian Qin. Their faces were a mixture of desire and misery. Not only was Jian Qin very handsome, but with a glorious title of an imperial protector, it would be a great honor to spend time with him. "You can go, I am not used to being served on. If I have something to ask for, I will call for one of you." Jian Qin spoke calmly before walking with the tiger cub. Seeing Jian Qin disappear, all of the carefully selected beautiful women had disappointed looks on their faces and walked out with sorrow seen clearly on their faces. On the outside of the palace, 500 armored soldiers stood quietly as if they were statues. With solemn expressions on their faces, they looked extremely impressive as befitting their positions as the guards of an imperial protector. To them, this was the greatest honor they could receive. No other guard would be as well respected as them. Aside from the other guards protecting the other imperial protectors, no other palace guard could compare to them, or even the army. All of these palace guards were great Saint Masters at the very least, with 5 Earth Saint Masters captains led by a 6th cycle Earth Saint Master. All of this could be said to be Jian Qin's personal army that served only the imperial protector, and even the king wouldn't be able to command them. Jian Qin hesitated as he listened. He knew that the Jessen Kingdom had a dozen Heaven Saint Masters at the most, and the other 4 great kingdoms had at least 23 of them. This difference in strength was far too great. Seeing the look of hesitation on Jian Qin's face, Qin Ji knew of the conundrum within his mind. Encouraging him, Qin Ji spoke. "Jian Qin, don't hesitate and don't forget your power. You have the authority to mobilize such a force." After some consideration, Jian Qin had finally consented to Qin Ji's proposal. For the sake of insurance, Jian Qin would bring some of the imperial advisors with him. "Jian Qin, you need not worry about the limits. With your command, you needn't even report this to the king personally. Have the palace guards gather some of the imperial advisors and convene here." Qin Ji spoke since he knew Jian Qin wasn't as knowledgeable about his newfound authority yet. Afterward, Jian Qin had followed Qin Ji's proposal and had the palace guards gather up the imperial advisors. In a flash, 20 varying aged imperial advisors had convened at the Qin Heaven Palace. Although Jian Qin was quite young, his strength had already earned the respect of all the imperial advisors. Despite the position between them and Jian Qin wasn't too far apart, they wished to become friends with Jian Qin. In their hearts, they knew that not only was Jian Qin accepted by the 4 imperial protectors, Jian Qin would sooner or later step into the realm of the Saint Rulers and even the Saint King realm. By then, they would want to be in his good graces, so this was the time to increase their connections. Once Jian Qin had explained his reason and plan to the 20 imperial advisors, each one of them had readily agreed to go with him. Seeing just how enthusiastic they were in replying, Jian Qin had doubted the space in power between an imperial advisor and imperial protector. In fact, he had begun to question whether or not if it was him being asked for help from the imperial advisors instead. Just then, a refined-looking elder walked forward with his hands cupped in salute. "Great imperial protector, this one is Shao Tian, the grandfather of Shao Han. I've heard yesterday that my dunce grandchild has offended you. I can only hope that you will forgive my unworthy grandchild. I've already taught him a lesson and locked him in as punishment. This journey with you will serve as a part my atonement for my grandchild. I hope that you will forgive him." Jian Qin looked at Shao Tian as if to study him. Shao Tian was wearing a white robe in a refined manner, and his white hair was tied up around his head. There was a heroic spirit to him, and justice could easily be used to describe his aura. "Is this the 5th cycle Heaven Saint Master Qin Ji told me about?" Jian Qin thought. Knowing who Shao Tian was completely different from actually meeting him. After seeing him just once, however, Jian Qin had a feeling that Shao Tian was an extremely righteous person. This type of open and straightforward person was a clear-cut contrast to his grandchild Shao Han. After some quick thinking, Jian Qin cupped his hands with a smile. "Mr. Shao Han, you must be joking. The matter with your grandchild I have already forgotten about. If Mr. Shao Han wishes to come with me, then I have no objections." Nonetheless, I am grateful for your support. Smiling widely, Xiao Tian spoke, "You are too modest. To be able to accompany an imperial protector is a great honor to me." Then after selecting the 4 strongest and most reliable individuals, he began to prepare to leave for the Jessan Kingdom from the Qin Heaven Palace and soon headed toward the Space Gate with Qin Ji leading the way. Leading the 5 imperial advisors with Xiao Tian as the strongest one there, the other 4 imperial advisors were 2 4th cycles and 2 3rd cycle Heaven Saint Masters. Although they weren't the strongest of the imperial advisors, Jian Qin had faith in them. The Space Gate was in the center of the palace, and with Jian Qin's status, he didn't require notifying anyone before using it. Taking the 5 imperial advisors to it, he handed several Class 5 monster cores and began to locate the desired destination. Then, in a single line, they crossed through the Space Gate. Chapter 399. Return of a King in a Single Stride. Jian Qin traveled countless of miles away from the Qin Huang Kingdom. For the 5 imperial advisors, they had traveled into a strange new area. The Space Gate they had traveled from slowly disappeared from view as Jian Qin took the tiger cub ahead and started to scout the area out. No matter where he turned his head to, he could see no signs of plant life or anything else. The entire place was a barren land. "Great Imperial Protector, where is this place?" One of the Imperial advisors spoke with a questioning look as if trying to figure out what place this was. "Qing Xiaofan, you should stay behind the Imperial Protector and speak less rubbish." Another Imperial advisor spoke. Forcing out a smile, Qing Xiaofan laughed in embarrassment. "I'm just very curious." From the 5 Imperial advisors that followed Jian Qin, there was Xiao Tian, Qing Xiaofan, Dongyi Junbai, Chao Kaqin, and Tian Luo. 2 of the elders were Qing Xiaofan and Dongyi Junbai, who were both 4th cycle Heaven Saint Masters. Chao Kaqin and Tian Luo were both 3rd cycle Heaven Saint Masters, but all 5 of these men were already over 100 years old. It was at this moment the tiger cub had suddenly awoke by opening its bright eyes in curiosity at the strange new place it was in. Taking notice of the cub, Jian Qin placed it on the ground. The cub was already decently big and was already the size of a mature dog. By this point, it wasn't suitable for the tiger to be around Jian Qin's chest. On the ground, the tiger cub started to run around merrily while everyone watched it revolve in a circle. From time to time, it would sniff each one of the 5 imperial advisors. Taking out a map from his space ring, Jian Qin scoured over it before looking dejected as he glanced around. "I don't have a map of this area, so I have no idea where we are. Let us find a nearby road." Jian Qin didn't have the most accurate coordinates of the Jessan Kingdom, so the Space Gate had only sent them to an approximate area near it. Right now, Jian Qin didn't even know if he was in the Jessan Kingdom or not. Qing Xiaofan cupped his hands together. "Then please guide us well, Imperial Protector." "Well then, let's leave this place." Jian Qin waved his hand, causing a large bubble of wind to envelop the tiger cub and levitated it into the air. The cub began to growl in discontent as it flew into the air. It was as if it wanted to be held by Jian Qin instead. Both of its eyes looked pitifully toward Jian Qin as tears began to well up in them. "Ha, Imperial Protector, this magical beast of yours is quite intelligent. It has to be a high-leveled magical beast." Qing Xiaofan spoke. Laughing, Jian Qin chose not to explain anything and instead patted the cub's head with his hand. "You've grown far too big for me to carry anymore. Allow me to bring you through the air with my wind element instead." "That's pretty amazing. Is he even an Earth Saint Master?" Several people from the inn began to murmur in surprise at this supposed Earth Saint Master's strength. Hearing this, Jian Qin had a slight smile on his face. He had already guessed that this speed could only belong to the Heaven-tier battle skill wielder Ming Dong, who was also an Earth Saint Master. But the man hadn't finished saying all that he knew on the subject. The fall of 2 Heaven Saint Masters hadn't gone unnoticed by the 4 allied kingdoms. 2 days later, the 4 kingdoms employed 2 million soldiers to the northern stronghold to engage in a day and night battle. The sounds of the war had deafened the ears of everyone, and the blood of the fallen dyed the ground a permanent red with the bodies stacked up on top of a mountain. By that point, the northern stronghold of the Jesson kingdom could not longer keep up with the battle. Even the reinforced tempered steel gate had been broken down, with both sides nursing heavy losses. I heard a Heaven Saint Master from the Pingyang kingdom had even captured a high-ranking officer. Cutting off both arms and legs, the Pingyang kingdom then had him strung up on top of the walls of the Pingyang kingdom's stronghold. How savage! Did the Pingyang kingdom have some sort of intense grudge with that officer? Even with the advantage they had, did they have to act in such a manner? For both his arms and legs to be severed, that person must be an illustrious general then. The inn started to chatter once more with this new piece of information with an interested fervor. Smiling, the man shook his head. You guess wrongly. That person was no illustrious general, he was just some nobody called Changyang who, I believe. He was merely just a frontline commander. Seated from not too far away, Jian Chen's entire body froze up as his face suddenly turned pale to a terrifying degree. In an instant, he had disappeared and reappeared right in front of the man who spoke. Both of his hands grabbed onto the clothes of the speaker and lifted him straight out of his stool as Jian Chen thundered, "What did you just say? Who was the person that had their limbs amputated and strung up on the walls?" Jian Chen's eyes grew extremely red and a killing intent could be felt from him. "Bastard, are you trying to die?" The elder exploded in rage as he grabbed at Jian Chen's neck with his own hands. "Speak!" Jian Chen roared like how a furious lion would. His voice had caused the entire inn to shake as his eyes grew even colder. The spark in his eyes was almost like a sharp sword that could pierce into the man's own eyes, terrifying him so much he couldn't look at Jian Chen directly. At the same time, an extremely formidable amount of killing intent exuded from Jian Chen's body, causing everyone in the inn to feel like they had been dropped into a vat of icy cold water, chilling them down to their very bones. The previously noisy inn had instantly turned quiet. Everyone's eyes turned toward the furious Jian Chen with their bodies trembling in fear. Not a single one of them had dared to move since from the youngster's aura, they could all feel a terrifying amount of power within him. Even the man that Jian Chen had grabbed hold of had been stunned into silence. Without another outburst, his face had turned pale and his entire body began to tremble fiercely. Jian Chen's entire killing aura had covered the place, but it had affected him the most. With the aura, the man felt himself unable to breathe and slowly suffocating to death. "Don't kill me. What did you want to know?" "I've already said everything." "I know," the man stuttered in fear. By now, he had begun to treat Jian Chen as a terrifying death god that caused even his soul to quake. Jian Chen's eyes grew in ferocity as he stared at the man with unconcealed bloodlust. Who had his arms and legs amputated before being strung up on the wall? "You better not lie to me, or I'll let you die a pauper's death." With his last sentence, Jian Chen's words had already devolved into a primal growl that combined scarily with his bloodshot eyes. That person was Changyang Hu. He was captured by a Heaven Saint Master in the Pingyang kingdom. All 4 limbs were cut off, and then strung up on the wall for an entire day. The man stammered. Chapter 401. Advent of the Furious. After confirming things, Jian Chen's face grew extremely dark. The killing intent that was originally within the inn had instantly exploded outward to cover the streets, causing even those on the outside to suddenly find it hard to breathe. It was almost as if the entire temperature nearby had gone down by several degrees and dunked them all within a pool of icy water. This effect on them had been so extreme that it caused even their spirits to shake. The 5 imperial advisors all gave each other a baffled look. They had never seen such a strong amount of killing intent come out from Jian Chen before and had no idea what to do. "Big brother." Jian Chen's eyes grew redder as if blood was starting to gather within it. With a growl, he tossed the man aside and instantly flew out of the inn with the wind element in the world accelerating his speed away from the place. As he flew into the sky, A cyan-colored glow appeared around his body and shot him straight forward before disappearing from sight completely. Imperial Protector! The 5 Imperial advisors cried out. Each one bolted from their stools with serious face. Seeing Jian Chen's reaction to what the previous person said, each one of them could guess that there was a connection between Jian Chen and the man who had all of his limbs cut off. You 5 go help the Jesson Kingdom fight off the 4 allied kingdoms. Protect everyone from the Changyang clan. Straight away, the 5 men could hear Jian Chen's icy voice call out to them. Jian Chen's announcement caused them to feel speechless. With a helpless look to each other, Xiao Tian spoke out, "Let's go to the Jesson Kingdom then." Yeah. Jian Chen's sudden departure had caused the tiger cub to be hurt. Unable to continue eating the barbecued beef on the table, the tiger cub instantly leaped down from the table and sped towards the doors. Both of its eyes began to well up with tears as it cried out desolately. The scene was like a mother abandoning its child, causing everyone watching to have an unbearable feeling of pity. Seeing how pitiful the tiger cub was, the 5 Imperial advisors looked on with a disturbed expression. Walking up to it, Xiao Tian wrapped the tiger cub around his chest before looking back to the others. "Let us go." After walking out the inn, the 5 Imperial advisors flew off into the sky, leaving the rest of the inn speechless. Jian Chen was wrapped up in a layer of wind, causing his body to fly off at a speeding light that was easily seen even in the daytime. Right now, his travel speed had reached an all-time high as he flew toward the Pingyang Kingdom's stronghold. Within Jian Chen's mind, he couldn't help but think back to his eldest brother Changyanghu. A brother like that was an absolutely unforgettable person. In the past, he had also thought about returning to Kargath Academy and let his elder brother see his strength. He had never imagined that his triumphant return to his homeland and family would be met with a heart-wrenching tragedy that he couldn't bear to accept. Eldest brother! Jian Chen howled in grief before his eyes flashed red and a large amount of killing intent began to billow outward in a single wave of emotions like a cloud. The air around Jian Chen turned cyan in color before he instantly flew toward the stronghold walls. The 2 million guards standing watch over at the stronghold had jolted with surprise. All of the soldiers within the tents immediately charged out and stared at the incoming figure of Jian Chen. Bang 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 bang. Several drums could be heard from within the stronghold, signifying that an enemy was invading and that the entire stronghold should prepare itself. On top of the city walls, an armored middle-aged man walked out from a nearby building. Seeing the flying figure of Jian Chen, his face blanched for a moment before barking out an order, "Release the arrows." At the command, several whizzing sounds could be heard in the air as several large crossbolts were shot from the stronghold. Jian Chen's eyes flashed with a violet light as he began to control the world itself. The crossbolts flying at him several kilometers away began to slow down in speed noticeably. Not too long later, the crossbolts froze up in midair, much to the shock of the soldiers watching. Every single one of the crossbolts began to revolve in suspension before an azure and violet flash of light enveloped them. In the next second, they were sent flying back at the stronghold with a speed even faster than when they were first shot. The soldiers looking on from the walls cried out in shock. Before the commander could bark out another order, the crossbolts pierced into the stronghold walls. Bang 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 bang. Following the series of explosions, the walls of the stronghold could be seen with several holes and plumes of smoke coming out of it. Several of the more unfortunate soldiers had been struck through the chest with the arrow, and the structural foundation of several buildings had been compromised. By this point, Jian Chen had already arrived at Changyanghu's side. With great sorrow and tears, Jian Chen cut apart at the rope holding his brother. It was with great pain that he held Changyanghu to his chest. "Eldest brother!" Seeing how Changyanghu was unconscious, Jian Chen called out in grief once more. With his eldest brother a cripple in physique, there was no way Jian Chen would have been able to accept this. Hurriedly taking out one of the radiant spirit pills he had taken from the cave during his time in the gathering of the mercenaries, he forcefully fed the pill to Changyanghu to preserve his life. His eldest brother was still alive, but because of the blood loss, he was barely hanging on by a thread. Taking out a gem from his space ring, the commander of the army immediately crushed it before jumping down the walls. With his strength as an Earth Saint Master, he stood no chance at all against a Heaven Saint Master, so the only chance in preserving his life was to flee. Fire, fire! Shoot him down! Several soldiers began to cry out before shooting the crossbows at Jianchen. One by one, the iron crossbolts began to fire at Jianchen like moths to the flame and covering the entire sky with iron. But Jianchen's ire had already climbed up to the peak. In this moment, his eyes had flashed a dangerous azure and violet color before his mind force encompassed the entire area around him. The crossbolts were unable to advance any closer to his body and froze up in midair. Slowly turning around, they ricocheted back towards the soldiers with the azure and violet light reinforcing its speed. Cries of misery could be heard as soldiers fell to the ground by the mass. With the azure and violet sword chi reinforcing the crossbolts, there was no way for any of the soldiers to defend themselves. Jianchen continued to control the crossbolts with his mind, slaughtering every single one of the soldiers in his sight. In a short moment, several 100,000 soldiers garrisoned in the stronghold had been massacred. Afterward, the azure and violet sword chi that were around the crossbolts began to converge in front of Jianchen before forming a 10-meter-long sword. Grabbing hold of it, Jianchen instantly swung it at the stronghold. Qian Yun, I never would have thought you would bring your Qiangan kingdom into this. Could it be you are also conspiring against the Jessen kingdom with the other 4 kingdoms? Chang Wuji's face was like stone now. The situation had grown extremely dire. If the Qiangan kingdom entered into the equation, then that meant there was 5 kingdoms fighting against the Jessen kingdom. Chang Wuji had also known that Qian Yun was a part of the imperial line within the Qiangan kingdom. He had resided within the deepest part of the palace in order to cultivate and had already lived for nearly 400 years. Despite being a 5th cycle Heaven Saint Masters, he was infinitely close to becoming a 6th cycle Heaven Saint Master and was also the strongest individual in the Qiangan kingdom. Qian Yun looked at Chang Wuji for a moment before looking at Jianchen with a dark look. Who is he? The 4 Heaven Saint Masters from the Pingyang kingdom shook their heads. We don't know who he is, but he has to be related to the Jessen kingdom. Qian Yun stared at Jianchen for a brief moment before turning back to Chang Wuji with a smile. Brother Wuji, we haven't seen each other in 100 years, but I didn't think that your strength would reach such a degree. The Qiangan kingdom is not involving itself in this affair. I merely wish for your heaven-tier battle skill. You want my heaven-tier battle skill? Chang Wuji growled. Correct, Brother Wuji. If you hand over the battle skill to me, then I will back out of this. Qian Yun laughed. You don't lack courage. The 3 forms of the wild python is the legacy imparted to me by my master, yet you still dare to ask. Do you not fear the return of my master and the destruction of your Qiangan kingdom? Chang Wuji spoke dangerously. Qian Yun had a look of fear streak across his face for a moment before smiling. Chang Wuji, you are still thinking of your master who has been lost for dozens of years? You are correct that Patriarch Changyang's strength is truly astounding and has no match. But you've forgotten, he has been lost these many years. With his age already reaching 900 years old, he has surely reached the end of his lifespan. The fact that no information has been heard from him is proof enough that he is dead. My master was a genius even among the heavens and a person without equal. Just what mystery in the world could stop him? When he returns, he will raise your Qiangan kingdom. Sneering, Qian Yun spoke. Chang Wuji, I, Qian Yun, am not an easily threatened person. I have given my word. If you hand over the heaven-tier battle skill to me, then I will leave. Don't think that just because this old man has been injured, you will not escape unharmed. A surge of energy became to well up from within Chang Wuji. Despite the injured state he was in, his head was still held up high without fear of combat. At that moment, the 5 enemy Heaven Saint Masters were preparing to fight.